Hello friends. Did you know nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It really helps. Thank you for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I've been in the trucking business for almost 12 years, and I thought I'd seen everything you could possibly witness on the road. The ice storms in Montana, the dust storms in Arizona, the thick fog in the Midwest where you can barely see your own hood. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened to me in the convoy from Denver to Cheyenne in the winter of 2019. The call came around 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday night. I was already lying in bed at the truck stop at exit 217, trying to get some sleep before heading to Casper early in the morning. My phone started vibrating on the nightstand, the dispatcher's number flashing on the screen. I almost didn't answer. I should have trusted that instinct. "Hayes, you available?" It was Randall, night supervisor at the depot. His voice had that edge to it, the one he got when a client was breathing down his neck about a priority shipment. "Depends," I said, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "What's the run?" 5-truck convoy, Denver to Cheyenne. Medical supplies and refrigerated goods. Client wants them there by 6 a.m., no exceptions. You'd be truck 3 in the line. Good pay, double rate for the overnight. I did the math in my head. 7 hours, maybe 8 with the convoy speed restrictions. The money was good, and I could use it. My daughter's tuition payment was coming up, and I was a bit short. Who else is rolling? Cole's taking lead. Got Briggs and Mason confirmed. Still waiting on one more. Randall paused. "Look, I know it's short notice, but this is premium pay. Straight shot up I-25, convoy protocol the whole way. Should be easy money." That should have been my second warning. Nothing in this job is ever easy money. "Yeah, all right, I'll take it. Give me 45 minutes to get to the depot. 30 would be better. Wheels up at midnight sharp." I hung up and stared at the ceiling of my sleeper cab for a long moment. Something about the whole thing felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. The job sounded routine enough. Convoys weren't my favorite. Too much coordination, too many personalities, too many things that could go wrong, but they paid well and usually went smooth if everyone followed protocol. I got dressed, fired up the engine, and headed south toward the Denver depot. The roads were mostly empty, just the occasional car heading home from a late shift or a bar. The temperature had dropped into the teens, and a light snow was starting to fall. Nothing serious, just enough to make the asphalt shimmer under the streetlights. The depot was lit up like a prison yard when I rolled in. 4 trucks were already lined up near the loading bays, engines running, exhaust rising in white clouds against the security lights. I recognized Cole's rig at the front, a newer Peterbilt with custom chrome that he babied like it was his firstborn. Mason's beaten-up Kenworth was second in line, and Briggs had his International positioned third. I pulled into the 4th spot and killed the engine. Through my windshield I could see Cole walking down the line, clipboard in hand, doing his pre-convoy check. He was old school, maybe 60. With gray hair he kept military short, and a handlebar mustache he'd been growing since before I was born. Good driver, serious about safety, not much for small talk. I climbed down from the cab just as he reached my truck. "Hayes," he said with a nod. "Glad you could make it. We're 1 short still, but Randall says they're on the way. Should be here in 10. "What's the cargo?" I asked, more out of habit than real curiosity. Cole glanced at his clipboard. "You're carrying refrigerated pharmaceuticals. Temperature controlled, needs to stay between 36 and 46 degrees the whole trip. Mason's got medical equipment, surgical stuff. Briggs has more pharmaceuticals. I'm hauling blood products and plasma. Fifth truck. He checked his notes, supposed to have more equipment and supplies. Hell of a shipment for a midnight run, I said. What's the urgency? Cole shrugged. Above my pay grade. Hospital network in Wyoming had some kind of supply chain failure. They need this stuff for surgeries scheduled tomorrow morning. Our job is to get it there, not ask questions. Made sense, I supposed. The medical industry didn't run on a 9-to-5 schedule. People got sick at midnight, same as noon. Convoy speed? I asked. 65 max, nobody breaks formation without radio clearance. Standard spacing, 200 feet between trucks. CB on Channel 19 the whole way. Weather looks clear until we hit the state line. Might get some snow north of Fort Collins, but nothing we can't handle. He looked up from his clipboard, and I caught something in his eyes I didn't quite like. Concern, maybe, or uncertainty. Stay tight on this one, Hayes. Clients paying extra for guaranteed delivery time. No breakdowns, no delays. Understood. He moved on to check Mason's rig while I walked around my truck, doing my own inspection. Tires looked good, lights working, refrigeration unit humming along at the right temperature. Everything seemed in order. The snow was falling a bit harder now, fat flakes that melted on contact with the still warm pavement. I heard the rumble of another diesel engine and turned to see the fifth truck pulling into the depot. It was a Freightliner, older model, maybe 15 years on it. The paint was faded, and one of the headlights looked dimmer than the other. Not exactly the kind of rig I'd expect on a premium pay medical run, but maybe that's all the dispatcher could get on short notice. The driver climbed down, and I got my first look at him. Tall, maybe 6'3", built like he'd done hard labor before trucking. He wore a leather jacket despite the cold and had a face that looked like it had seen a few fights. Something about him immediately put me on edge, though I couldn't say why. Just a feeling in my gut. Cole walked over to greet him, and I watched them talk for a minute. The new driver nodded a few times, gesturing at his truck. Cole checked his clipboard, then waved him into the fifth position behind me. As the Freightliner rolled past, I caught a glimpse of the driver's face in the glow of the security lights. He was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, hands tight on the wheel. The look of a man who didn't want to be here but didn't have a choice. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself more than once. "All right, listen up," Cole's voice carried across the depot yard. "We're wheels up in 5 minutes. Standard convoy protocol applies. Maintain spacing, maintain speed, maintain radio contact. Check in every 30 minutes on the 30s, 12:30, 1 o'clock, so on. If you have a problem, call it in immediately. Questions?" Nobody said anything. We were all professionals. We knew how this worked. "Good, let's roll." I climbed back into my cab and started the engine. The clock on my dashboard read 11:58 p.m. 2 minutes to midnight. I'd done plenty of night runs, but there was something about starting a convoy at the stroke of midnight that felt ominous, like we were tempting fate somehow. At exactly midnight, Cole's brake lights flashed twice, the signal to move out. His rig lurched forward, followed by Mason, then Briggs. I waited for the gap to open up. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Then put my truck in gear and pulled out behind them. In my mirrors, I saw the Freightliner fall in behind me. We formed a line of lights cutting through the falling snow, 5 trucks heading north toward the interstate. The depot disappeared behind us, swallowed by the darkness and the weather. Channel 19 crackled to life on my CB. "Convoy check. Everyone copy?" Cole's voice steady and professional. 2, copy, Mason responded. 3, good, Briggs said. 4, copy, I said. There was a pause. Static hissed through the speaker. Then finally, 5. The voice was deep, almost a growl. the new driver. Good. Let's keep it tight, gentlemen. Next check at 12:30. We merged onto I-25 North, and the city lights began to thin out behind us. The highway stretched ahead, a ribbon of dark asphalt lit only by our headlights and the occasional street lamp. Traffic was non-existent, just us and the empty road. I settled into my seat and tried to relax. 7 hours to Cheyenne. Straight shot, good weather, experienced drivers, should be routine. But as we passed mile marker 215 and left the last of Denver's suburbs behind, I noticed something that made my hands tighten on the wheel. In my side mirror, I counted the trucks behind me, just like I always did on a convoy, automatic habit, making sure nobody fell behind or drifted out of formation. I counted once, then again because the first count didn't make sense. There were 3 trucks behind me. I was truck 4. There should have been 1 truck behind me, just the Freightliner. I keyed my CB. 4 to Convoy. Anyone else see extra lights back here? Static. No response. I checked my mirrors again, more carefully this time. Sure enough, I could make out 3 sets of headlights maintaining Convoy spacing behind me. I could clearly identify the Freightliner in the first position. I recognized the dimmer headlight. But behind it were 2 more trucks, running dark except for their headlights, spaced perfectly, maintaining our speed. 4 to 5, you got company back there? More static. Then the Freightliner driver's voice, confused. -4, just me. You sure about that? I'm counting 3 trucks behind me. I am looking at my mirrors right now. Nobody behind me but empty highway. I frowned, leaning closer to my mirror. The lights were still there, clear as day. 3 trucks. Maybe it was a trick of the snow, I thought. Maybe some other convoy happened to be heading north at the same time, and they'd fallen in behind us by coincidence. Lead, this is 4. We might have picked up a tail. 3 additional trucks running convoy spacing behind 5. Cole's voice came back, irritated. 4. We're the only authorized convoy on this route tonight. Dispatch confirmed. You sure about what you're seeing? I looked again. The lights were still there, unwavering, perfectly spaced. Affirmative, lead, 3 trucks, clear visual. 5, can you confirm? Negative, lead. I'm not showing anything behind me, road's empty. There was a long pause, then Cole said, 4, you feeling okay? You tired? I'm fine, I said, though my heart was starting to beat faster. Wide awake, and I'm telling you, I see 3 trucks. Mason, Briggs, either of you got visual on anything unusual? Negative, lead, Mason said. Nothing here, Briggs added. Another pause. 4, I'm going to chalk this up to snow glare or fatigue. Keep your eyes on the road and maintain position. If those trucks are real, they'll pass us or fall back eventually. If they're shadows, they'll disappear. Either way, we stay focused on the job. Copy? I didn't want a copy. I wanted to argue, to insist that I wasn't seeing things. But Cole was lead, and arguing over the CB was a good way to lose convoy jobs. Copy, lead. Good. Next check at 12:30, convoy out. The radio went silent except for the soft static of dead air. I drove on, trying to focus on the road ahead, on Briggs' taillights, on maintaining my spacing. But my eyes kept drifting to the mirrors, to those 3 sets of headlights behind me, following at exactly the right distance, never wavering, never falling back. The snow was getting heavier. Visibility was dropping. The highway felt narrower somehow, like the darkness was pressing in from both sides. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice was whispering that something was wrong with this convoy. Something had been wrong from the very beginning. I thought about my daughter, about that tuition payment, about why I'd agreed to take this job on such short notice. The money had seemed good. But what if the money was good because nobody else wanted this run? What if the other drivers had known something I didn't? At 12:17, my temperature gauge flickered. Just once, just for a second. But in a refrigerated trailer carrying temperature-sensitive medical supplies, that flicker was enough to make my blood run cold. I watched the gauge like a hawk, but it stayed steady. 38 degrees, right in the safe zone. At 12:23, I thought I heard something on the CB. Not words exactly. More like a rhythmic clicking, almost like Morse code. I turned up the volume, but it faded away into static before I could make sense of it. At 12:29, 1 minute before our scheduled check-in, I looked at my mirrors one more time. There were 4 trucks behind me now. I opened my mouth to key the CB, to report it, to demand that someone else confirm what I was seeing. But before I could, Cole's voice crackled through. "Convoy check. Everyone copy. 2, copy. 3, copy." My finger hovered over the transmit button. I looked at the mirrors again. 4 trucks. 4 sets of headlights in perfect convoy formation. 4, copy? Cole prompted. "Copy," I said, my voice coming out hoarse. 5, copy. We were 5 trucks. That's what we'd started as. 5 trucks in convoy, Denver to Cheyenne. So if I was seeing 4 trucks behind me, that meant... I did the math again, counting on my fingers like a child. Lead truck, that's Cole. Second truck, Mason. Third truck, Briggs. Fourth truck, me. Fifth truck, the Freightliner. 5 trucks total. So if there were 4 trucks behind me, we had 9 trucks in this convoy. But that couldn't be right. That wasn't possible. "Next check at 1 o'clock, Cole said. "Weather's getting worse up here. Visibility dropping. Everyone tighten up your following distance a bit. Give yourself more reaction time." The others acknowledged. I mumbled something that might have been agreement. But I wasn't really listening anymore. I was watching my mirrors, watching those 4 sets of headlights, and trying to figure out which of them was real and which was something else entirely. The mile markers ticked by. 220, 225, 30. We were making good time despite the snow. At this rate, we'd hit Fort Collins by 1:30, maybe sooner. My hands were sweating on the wheel. I cranked down the window a few inches, letting the cold air blast my face, making sure I was awake, making sure this wasn't some kind of hallucination brought on by fatigue or stress. The cold was real. The snow hitting my face was real. And in my mirrors, those headlights were real too. At 12:47, my CB crackled with that clicking sound again. This time, it lasted longer, maybe 10 seconds. I listened hard, trying to pick out a pattern, but there wasn't one. Just random clicks and pops, like someone keying their mic in no particular rhythm. "Anyone else hearing that?" I asked, breaking radio protocol. No response. "The clicking on the channel, anyone else picking that up?" 4, this is lead. "I'm not hearing any clicking. Radio's clear on my end." "Same here," Mason said. "Nothing but static." I bit my lip. Maybe my radio was going bad, or maybe... At 12:53, the clicking resolved into something that might have been a voice. I couldn't make out words, but the cadence was there, the rise and fall of speech. It was coming from somewhere behind me, somewhere back in the convoy. I stared at my mirrors, watching the headlights, trying to see if any of the trucks were transmitting. At 12:58, 2 minutes before the next scheduled check-in, I counted the trucks behind me one more time. 6. 6 trucks, running in perfect formation, maintaining perfect spacing, following me through the snow and the darkness like a funeral procession. And then, as I watched, the 6th truck's headlights began to flash. Not like a signal, not in any pattern I recognized, just random flashing, on and off, bright and dark, like someone was playing with the switch. "Lead, this is 4, I said, my voice shaking now. "I need to pull over. Something's wrong with my..." Convoy check. Cole interrupted. Right on time at 1 o'clock. Everyone copy. 2, copy. 3, copy. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. I was watching the 6th truck's headlights flash in my mirror, and now I could see something else. Between the flashes, in the brief moments of darkness, there was something standing on the side of the road. Something tall and thin and completely motionless, watching us pass. 4, you copy? Cole's voice had an edge of concern now. The thing on the side of the road turned its head, if it had a head, to follow my truck as we passed. 4, respond immediately. I tore my eyes away from the mirror and keyed the CB. Copy, I gasped. Copy, I'm here. You all right back there? No, I wanted to say. No, I'm not all right. There are trucks behind me that shouldn't exist, and there's something on the side of the road watching us. And every instinct I have is screaming at me to stop this convoy and turn around and get the hell off this highway. But what I said was, fine. Just thought I saw some ice on the road, but it's clear. Good. Stay sharp. Next check at 1:30. The convoy rolled on through the snow and the darkness, and I drove with my eyes locked on Briggs' taillights ahead of me, refusing to look at my mirrors, refusing to acknowledge the impossible thing that was happening behind me. But I could feel them there. All those extra trucks, falling in line one by one, joining our convoy like we'd sent out invitations. And I knew, with a cold certainty that settled into my bones, that by the time we reached Cheyenne, there would be even more. Mile marker 235 passed by my window. We were 30 miles from Fort Collins, 4.5 hours from Cheyenne, 4.5 hours from finding out what happens when a convoy picks up trucks that aren't supposed to exist. I reached for my coffee thermos with a shaking hand and tried not to think about how many sets of headlights I'd see if I looked in my mirrors one more time. Fort Collins appeared through the snow like a ghost town. We passed the city limits sign at 1:47 a.m., nearly 20 minutes ahead of schedule despite the weather. The streetlights cast orange pools on the empty streets, and I caught glimpses of closed businesses, dark houses, traffic lights cycling through their patterns for nobody. Cole's voice crackled over the CB, lead to convoy, Fort Collins checkpoint, fuel status check. 2, 3/4 tank. 3, just under half. 4, 5/8, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. There was a pause, then, 5, you copy? Static. 5, respond with fuel status. More static, then a burst of that clicking sound I'd heard earlier. It lasted maybe 3 seconds before resolving into the Freightliner driver's voice, half tank. Copy all, no refuel stop necessary. We push through to Cheyenne. Next check at 2 o'clock. I had managed, through sheer force of will, to keep my eyes off my mirrors for the past 40 minutes. I'd focused on the road, on Briggs' taillights, on the snow accumulating on my windshield between wiper passes. I'd turned on some music, classic country, Merle Haggard, trying to fill the cab with something normal, something real. But now, as we left Fort Collins behind and headed back into the empty darkness of the highway, I couldn't resist any more. I looked at my side mirror and immediately wished I hadn't. There were 8 trucks behind me now, 8 sets of headlights in perfect convoy formation, spacing exact, speeds matched. The Freightliner was still there in the first position, distinctive with its dimmer headlight. But behind it were 7 more trucks, stretching back into the snowy darkness like a chain of ghosts. My hands started shaking on the wheel. This wasn't fatigue. This wasn't snow glare or shadows or any rational explanation my mind wanted to offer. This was something else, something wrong, something that violated every rule of reality I understood. I grabbed my CB mic. Lead, this is 4. I need to report. 4, hold your traffic. Cole's voice cut me off. 2, you seeing any ice patches up there? Negative, lead, roads clear, little snow, but pavement's holding. Copy. 3. No ice. Getting some accumulation on the shoulder, but the lanes are fine. I tried again. Lead. This is 4. I really need to... 4. Unless it's an emergency. Hold your traffic. We're in a tight window here. I bit back my frustration. What would I even say? That I was seeing impossible trucks? That our 5-truck convoy had somehow tripled in size? Cole had already brushed off my concerns once. He'd just tell me I was tired, that I was seeing things. But I wasn't tired. I'd never been more awake in my life. At 1:53, my temperature gauge flickered again. This time it dropped to 34 degrees before jumping back up to 38. That was cutting it close. Too close. If the refrigeration unit failed, and the cargo warmed above 46 degrees, I'd be liable for thousands of dollars in damaged goods. I tapped the gauge, a useless gesture that nonetheless made me feel like I was doing something. The needle stayed steady at 38. For now. At 1:56, the clicking on the CB started again. But this time, it had a rhythm to it. 3 short clicks, 3 long, 3 short. A pattern I recognized from my grandfather's old war stories. SOS. Someone was sending SOS in Morse code over the convoy channel. I keyed my mic. Lead, are you getting this? Getting what? 4. The clicking. The SOS signal. 4. My radio's dead silent except for normal check-ins. You might have a loose connection in your CB. Give it a smack and see if that clears it up. I smacked the side of the radio hard. The SOS clicking continued, unchanged. At 1:59, Cole called for the 2 o'clock check-in a minute early. We all responded in order. When it got to truck 5, there was a longer pause than usual before the Freightliner driver responded. And when he did, his voice sounded different, strained, like he was forcing the words out. 5. Copy. You good back there, 5? Cole asked. Another long pause. Yeah, all good. But he didn't sound good. He sounded terrified. I made a decision. I switched my CB from channel 19 to channel 23, a channel we weren't supposed to use during the convoy, but one that should still reach any truck within a few miles. 5. This is 4. You reading me on 23? A burst of static, then, I read you, 4. You seeing anything weird back there, in your mirrors? His response came quickly, words tumbling over each other. Jesus Christ, you see them too? The trucks? I thought I was losing my mind. I've been counting. They keep multiplying. There's got to be. How many do you count? Behind me? At least 6. Maybe 7. I can't. The snow makes it hard to tell where one set of lights ends and the next begins. My stomach dropped. If there were 6 or 7 trucks behind him, and I was seeing 8 behind me, including him, that meant... I did the math, even though I didn't want to. 13 trucks, minimum, possibly more. We'd started with 5. We need to tell Cole, I said. I tried, an hour ago. He said I was seeing reflections from the snow. Said there was nothing on the GPS showing any other vehicles on this stretch of highway. So, what do we do? Before the Freightliner driver could answer, Cole's voice boomed over channel 19. 4, 5, get back on the convoy channel, now. I switched back, my heart pounding. I don't know what you two think you're doing, Cole continued, but side-channel communication during a convoy is a protocol violation. You got something to say, you say it where everyone can hear it. Understood? Copy, lead, I said. 5. Copy. Good. Now both of you maintain radio discipline and focus on the road. We're less than 4 hours from delivery. I don't want any more distractions. The channel went quiet, except for the soft hiss of static and the occasional burst of that SOS clicking. I drove on, watching the mile markers tick by. 245, 250, 2005. We were making excellent time. At this rate, we'd arrive in Cheyenne before 5 a.m., a full hour ahead of schedule. But something was nagging at me. I pulled out my phone and checked the GPS. According to the map, we should have passed the exit for Wellington about 10 minutes ago. But I didn't remember seeing it. I'd been focused on my mirrors, sure, but I should have noticed the exit sign, the overpass. I scrolled ahead on the GPS to the next landmark. There was a rest area coming up in about 5 miles on the right side of the highway. I made a mental note to watch for it. 5 miles passed, then 10, then 15. No rest area. I checked the GPS again. According to the map, I was currently sitting in the rest area parking lot. But through my windshield, all I saw was highway stretching ahead into the darkness. Briggs's taillights. The falling snow. Lead, this is 4. I'm showing some GPS anomalies. Anyone else having navigation issues? Negative, 4. My GPS is tracking fine. Showing us on I-25 north, about 40 miles south of the Wyoming border. I looked at my own GPS. It showed the same thing, 40 miles south of the border. But something felt wrong. The mile markers didn't match. The landmarks were missing. It was like the highway had become a loop, showing us the same stretch of road over and over while our GPS insisted we were making progress. At 2:17, my temperature gauge dropped again. This time it fell to 32 degrees and stayed there for a full minute before climbing back up. I watched it nervously, willing it to stabilize. 32 was freezing. If it went any lower, if the cargo actually froze. At 2:23, Mason broke the silence. Lead, I'm showing a warning light on my dash. Oil pressure. Can you make it to Cheyenne? Probably, but I'd like to pull over and check it if we get a chance. Negative. Clients paying for time-guaranteed delivery. Unless it's critical, we push through. Copy. At 2:30, the scheduled check-in, something strange happened. Cole called for the check, and we all responded in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then, after truck 5 responded, there was another voice. 6, copy. Everyone went silent. I stared at the CB, my blood turning to ice. Who the hell is that? Cole demanded. Identify yourself immediately. No response. This is a private convoy on a closed contract. If you're trying to piggyback on our channel, switch to a different frequency now. Still no response. 5, you got a visual on anyone behind you? The Freightliner driver's voice was barely a whisper. Negative, lead, road's empty. But I was looking at my mirrors, and I could see the truth. There were 9 trucks behind me now, 9 sets of headlights, 9 perfectly spaced vehicles following us through the snow. And as I watched, one of them, I couldn't tell which one, flashed its brights 3 times in what might have been a greeting, or might have been a warning. At 2:47, the clicking resolved into words. Faint, distorted, barely audible through the static, but definitely words. Turn back. While you can, turn back. Lead, you hearing this? I said. Hearing what? 4? The voice on the channel, telling us to turn back. 4, I'm going to say this one more time. My radio is clear. If you're having equipment problems, deal with them on your own time. Do not clutter the convoy channel with false reports. It's not false, Enough. Cole's voice was sharp enough to cut. One more outburst, and I'm reporting you to dispatch for unsafe convoy behavior. Do you understand? I understood. I understood that whatever was happening, I was on my own. Cole either couldn't hear what I was hearing, couldn't see what I was seeing, or was choosing to ignore it. Either way, he wasn't going to help. Copy. Lead, I said quietly. At 2:53, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Something on the side of the road, keeping pace with us. I turned my head to look, but there was nothing there. Just darkness and snow and the occasional reflective road sign. But I could still feel it. Something running alongside the convoy, matching our speed exactly, staying just outside the reach of our headlights. At 2:58, my temperature gauge went haywire. The needle swung wildly from 32 to 52 and back again, settling nowhere, the digital readout flickering between numbers that made no sense. I heard the refrigeration unit behind me kick into overdrive, the compressor screaming as it tried to compensate for temperature fluctuations that shouldn't be possible. "Lead, this is 4. I've got a refrigeration malfunction. I need to pull over and assess." "-4. We're less than 3 hours from delivery. You pull over now, you jeopardize the entire convoy timeline. The cargo could be compromised. Then drive faster and get it to Cheyenne before it spoils. We're not stopping." I wanted to argue, to insist, to tell him that this was bigger than a delivery timeline, that something fundamentally wrong was happening out here. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Cole had a job to do, and he was going to do it no matter what. At exactly 3:00 a.m., Cole called for the check-in. 1, copy. 2, copy. 3, copy. 4, copy, I said. There was a long pause. 5, respond. Static. 5, this is Lead. Respond immediately. More static, then that clicking sound, then 5, copy. But the voice was wrong. It wasn't the Freightliner driver. It was someone else, something else, using his call number. 6, copy. 7, copy. 8, copy. The voices kept coming, one after another. Call numbers climbing higher and higher. Some of them sounded human, some didn't. And Cole didn't seem to hear any of them except for the original 5. "Good check-in," he said when the voices finally stopped. "Next at 3:30, weather's clearing up ahead. Should have smooth sailing into Cheyenne." I looked out my windshield. The snow was getting worse, not better. Visibility was down to maybe 50 yards, but Cole said it was clearing. Cole said we were making good time. Cole said everything was fine. I didn't believe him anymore. At 3:17, I passed a mile marker that I'd already passed 30 minutes earlier. I was sure of it. The marker had a distinctive dent on one side, probably from where someone had hit it years ago. I'd noticed it the first time because the dent looked like a face. And now I was seeing it again. We were in a loop. We had to be. Driving the same stretch of highway over and over, thinking we were making progress, but actually going nowhere. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the GPS. It showed us steadily moving north, 45 miles south of the Wyoming border now. Making good time. But the mile marker I'd just passed said 257, the same marker I'd seen at 247. I was about to say something on the CB when Briggs' voice cut through the static. "Lead, I'm getting some weird readings on my instruments. Speedometer says 65, but my GPS says I'm doing 38. 2 here, same problem, speed's all over the place." Mason's voice. "Anyone else feel like we've been driving past the same scenery for the last hour?" Finally, someone else was seeing it. "Gentlemen," Cole said, and his voice was different now. Tired, resigned, like he'd been expecting this. "Stay calm, stay in formation. We're almost through." "Almost through what?" I demanded. "The stretch. This particular stretch of highway. It gets confused sometimes, especially at night, especially in the snow. Just keep driving. Don't stop, don't look back, don't leave formation. As long as we stay together, we'll make it through." "Cole, what the hell are you talking about?" Mason said. "You knew something was wrong with this run, didn't you?" I knew it was a possibility. That's why the pay was double rate. That's why dispatch had trouble finding drivers. Most of the old-timers know about this stretch. They won't run it after dark." "Jesus Christ," Briggs said. "And you didn't think to mention this before we left Denver? Would you have come if I had?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Cole said. "Look, I've run this route a dozen times at night. It's disorienting, yes. It plays tricks with your instruments, with your perception. But it's survivable. I've always made it through. We just have to trust the process and keep moving." "What about the trucks?" I asked. "The extra trucks in the convoy? Don't look at them. Don't acknowledge them. They're not real." "They look pretty real to me. They're echoes, reflections. I don't know what they are exactly, but they can't hurt you as long as you stay in formation and keep your eyes forward." At 3:29, a minute before the next check-in, I made the mistake of looking at my mirrors one more time. There were 12 trucks behind me now, all running dark except for their headlights. And in the cab of the closest one, the truck that should have been the Freightliner but somehow didn't look quite right anymore, I could see a silhouette. A driver sitting in the seat, hands on the wheel. Except the proportions were wrong. The arms were too long, the head was too narrow, the posture was too rigid. As I watched, the driver turned to look at me. I couldn't see its face, if it had a face, but I felt its attention, cold and vast and utterly inhuman. I jerked my eyes back to the road, my heart hammering in my chest. "Next check at 3:30, Cole said. "Right on schedule. Everyone respond." We went through the check-in, 1 through 5, all present, and then, faintly, barely audible, 13. I switched off my CB entirely. I couldn't handle it anymore, the clicking, the voices, the wrongness of it all. I'd drive in silence and focus on getting through this, whatever this was. The mile markers continued to repeat. 257. 259, 261, 257, 259, 61. Over and over, an endless loop of highway that led nowhere. My temperature gauge had given up entirely. The needle spun in lazy circles, the digital readout showing random numbers that ranged from -20 to over 100 degrees. The refrigeration unit behind me made sounds I'd never heard before. Grinding, whining, clicking sounds that seemed to echo the Morse code SOS I'd been hearing on the radio. At some point, I'd lost track of time, my dashboard clock had frozen at 3:33, I saw something ahead on the road. Not on the shoulder or in the median, but actually on the road, right in our lane. It was a truck, jackknifed across both northbound lanes, blocking our path completely. "Lead, do you see that?" I shouted, forgetting my CB was off. I flicked it back on. "Lead, there's a wreck ahead, jackknifed semi blocking the road." "I see it, 4. Maintain speed, maintain formation. We're going to hit it. Trust me." Cole's rig didn't slow down. Neither did Mason's or Briggs. They were going to drive straight into the wreck, and I was going to have to choose. Follow them into what looked like certain collision, or break formation and risk whatever fate Cole had warned about. I chose to trust. God help me, I chose to trust. We hit the jackknifed truck at 65 miles per hour, or rather we should have hit it. Instead, there was a moment of resistance, like driving through heavy fog, and then we were through it, on the other side, continuing north as if nothing had happened. In my side mirror, I caught a glimpse of the wreck behind us. It was still there, still blocking the road. And the 12 trucks that had been following me drove through it just like we had, one after another, passing through solid matter as if it was nothing. I was trembling so badly I could barely hold the wheel. My foot stayed steady on the accelerator through pure muscle memory. Years of training overriding the panic that threatened to shut down my brain. "Everyone okay?" Cole asked. Acknowledgements came in. 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't bother adding my voice. I wasn't okay. I was never going to be okay again. At some point after that, time had become meaningless. The clock still frozen, the mile markers still repeating. The snow stopped. Just like that, mid-fall, the flakes froze in the air and then faded away like they'd never existed. The darkness changed. It was still night, still black as pitch beyond our headlights, but now it felt different, heavier, more absolute. Like we'd driven off the edge of the world into some space where light itself struggled to exist. "Almost there," Cole said, though I don't know how he could tell. "Just a little farther." But farther to what? Wyoming? Cheyenne? Or something else, someplace that wasn't on any map, that existed in the gaps between the mile markers and the frozen minutes on my dashboard clock. My temperature gauge suddenly locked at exactly 38 degrees. My speedometer settled at 65. The refrigeration unit behind me went silent. Everything was working perfectly. That's when I knew we were in the deepest part of it, whatever it was. The place where reality gave up trying to make sense and just accepted the impossible as routine. "Lead," I said quietly. "Where are we?" Cole's response was a long time coming. "Nowhere. Everywhere between. Just keep driving, Hayes. Keep driving and don't stop. We're almost through. We have to be almost through." But he didn't sound certain anymore. He sounded lost. And in my mirrors, the number of trucks behind me had grown to 15. Then 20. Then I stopped counting because the line of headlights stretched back into infinity. A chain of ghost trucks following us deeper and deeper into the dark, into the loop, into the nowhere place between mile markers that kept repeating and time that refused to move forward. The radio crackled back to life, and through the static I heard a voice that might have been Cole, or might have been something wearing Cole's voice like a mask. "Convoy check. Everyone respond." And from the darkness behind me, from the infinite line of trucks that couldn't exist, the responses came. One after another, numbers climbing higher and higher, voices that were almost but not quite human. All of them saying they were fine, they were in formation, they were maintaining speed. All of them lying. I turned off my CB again and drove into the endless night, following tail lights that might belong to Briggs or might belong to something else, something that had replaced Briggs without anyone noticing. And I prayed that Cole was right, that we were almost through. But deep down, in the part of my brain that had been screaming warnings since we left Denver, I suspected the truth. We weren't almost through. We were never getting through. This convoy had no destination. This highway had no end. And somewhere behind me, truck number 47 was copying in for the check, its voice crackling with static and something that might have been hunger. I don't know when I realized we'd left reality completely behind. Maybe it was when my fuel gauge, which had read 3/4 full just an hour ago, suddenly showed empty, then full, then empty again in rhythmic pulses like a heartbeat. Maybe it was when I looked at Briggs' truck ahead of me and saw it flicker, just for a second, into something that definitely wasn't a Kenworth or any truck that had ever rolled off a factory floor. Or maybe it was when the sun started to rise. Except it wasn't rising in the east, where the sun had risen every single day for the past 4.5 billion years. It was rising in the west, behind us, casting our shadows long and wrong across the highway ahead. "Anyone else seeing this?" Mason's voice crackled over the CB, breaking the silence that had held for, I checked my clock, still 3:33 a.m. Time had stopped moving entirely. "Seeing what, too?" Cole's voice sounded distant, hollowed out. "The sun, it's coming up behind us." "Don't look at it," Cole said. "Eyes forward. Always, always forward." But I was already looking in my mirrors, and what I saw wasn't exactly a sun. It was light, yes, a vast and terrible light that was growing brighter by the second. But it was the wrong color. Not gold or orange or any shade that belonged to a star, but a kind of pale green-white that made my eyes water and my head throb. And it was getting closer. The light was moving, chasing us up the highway at impossible speed, swallowing the infinite chain of ghost trucks behind me one by one. As it consumed each truck, I heard a sound over the CB, a scream maybe, or something like a scream, but in a register that human throats couldn't produce. "Faster," Cole said. We need to go faster." "We're already pushing 70, Briggs protested. "Then push 80, 90, whatever it takes, don't let it catch us." My foot pressed harder on the accelerator, and my truck responded with a surge of power that shouldn't have been possible given the grade and the load I was carrying. Around me, the others were accelerating too, our convoy formation falling apart as the primal need for survival overrode all training and protocol. The speedometer crept upward, 75, 80, 85. The truck was shaking, the engine screaming, and I knew I was destroying the transmission. Knew I'd be lucky if I didn't blow a tire or throw a rod, but none of that mattered because the light was still gaining. In my mirrors, the last of the ghost trucks disappeared into the advancing glow. For a moment I thought I saw the Freightliner, the real one, with Truck 5's driver inside, trying to outrun the light. Then it was gone, swallowed whole, and the light reached out for me with fingers of pale fire. "It's not going to work," I said into the CB. "We can't outrun it." "We have to try," Cole shouted. "We have to." His voice cut off mid-word, replaced by static and then by silence. On the road ahead, I watched his truck flicker and fade, there 1 second and gone the next. Mason's followed a heartbeat later, then Briggs. I was alone on an empty highway with impossible light chasing me, and a clock frozen at 3:33 a.m. and mile marker 257, repeating endlessly on both sides of the road. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part, the part that had been driving trucks for 12 years, that had seen ice storms and flash floods and roads that tried to kill you just for existing, that part was angry. I slammed on the brakes. The truck shuddered and skidded, tires screaming, the whole rig threatening to jackknife. But I held it steady, brought it to a complete stop right there in the middle of the highway and waited for the light to catch me. It crashed over the truck like a wave, and for a moment everything was white and green and weightless. I felt myself lift out of the driver's seat, felt the truck dissolve around me, felt reality itself peel away in layers like old paint. And then I was standing on the highway, actually standing, my boots on solid asphalt. And the light had resolved into something I could almost comprehend. The highway stretched ahead and behind, identical in both directions, the same endless repetition of markers and lines and empty lanes. But now I could see what was beneath it, or maybe above it, or maybe woven through it in dimensions my brain couldn't properly process. The road was alive, not in any biological sense, but alive nonetheless. It pulsed and breathed and hungered, and it had been feeding on us, on our convoy, on our expectation of forward progress, on our certainty that driving north would eventually lead to a destination. Every mile we'd driven had taken us deeper into it, not because we were moving, but because we believed we were moving. Our conviction that we were making progress toward Cheyenne had made us into perfect prey. "Hayes." I turned to find Cole standing beside me. He looked solid, real, but also somehow translucent. like I could see through him to the road beyond. "You stopped," he said. "Nobody ever stops. They all run until the light takes them. Where are the others?" He gestured down the highway. In the distance I could see them. Mason, Briggs, the Freightliner driver, and dozens of others I didn't recognize. All standing motionless on the endless road, all flickering in and out of existence. "Some of them have been here for years," Cole said. "Decades, maybe. Time doesn't work right in this place, and that they're still running in their trucks, still trying to outrace the light, still checking in on the CB at scheduled intervals. They don't know they're already gone. But you do. I've done this run 13 times. I've made it through 12. The 13th, he shook his head. Dispatcher kept offering me more money. Double rate, triple. I should have known better. Should have known the payout was too good because they knew I wouldn't be collecting it. I looked at my own truck, parked on the highway behind me. It was flickering too, fading in and out, sometimes solid and sometimes ghostly. "Is there a way out?" I asked. "I don't know. I've been looking. Everyone here has been looking. The road it loops. No matter which direction you go, you end up back where you started." "What if we stop believing in the road?" Cole stared at me. "What?" "You said it feeds on our expectation, on our belief that we're making progress. What if we stop believing? What if we reject the entire premise?" I don't... Cole looked confused, like I'd asked him to imagine a color that didn't exist. But I was already walking. Not along the highway. That way led nowhere. I understood that now. Instead, I walked perpendicular to it, straight across the lanes and onto the shoulder and into the darkness beyond. "Hayes, wait! There's nothing out there!" "Good," I said, and kept walking. The asphalt gave way to gravel, then to dirt, then to nothing at all. My boots found purchase on a surface that felt like ground but looked like void. I kept walking, eyes forward, refusing to look back at the highway or the light or the ghosts of drivers who'd believed too strongly in the road. Behind me, I heard Cole shouting, and then other voices joining his. But they were fading, growing distant, and the highway was fading too, its pull on me weakening with every step. I walked for hours or seconds or years. There was no way to measure time in that place. I walked until my legs ached and my lungs burned and my mind went blank with exhaustion. I walked until I forgot why I was walking, forgot there had ever been a highway, forgot everything except the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other. And then I was sitting in my truck, and my truck was parked at a rest area, and sunlight was streaming through the windshield. Real sunlight. Yellow and warm and rising in the east exactly where it was supposed to be. I looked at my dashboard. The clock read 7:42 a.m. My fuel gauge showed a quarter tank. The temperature gauge was steady at 38 degrees. Everything was normal, everything was fine, except I had no memory of pulling off the highway, no memory of the last 4 hours. My CB crackled to life. "Respond if you can hear this. This is Wyoming State Patrol. We're looking for a convoy of 5 trucks that was reported missing overnight. If anyone on this channel has information..." I grabbed the mic with shaking hands. This is Hayes, Truck 4 from the Denver Convoy. I'm at a rest area off I-25. I don't know which one. I can't remember. Stand by. We're tracing your signal. Are you injured? Is your cargo intact?" I checked my trailer's temperature readout. 38 degrees, stable. "Cargo's fine. I'm okay. But the other trucks, the convoy, they were just... We've been searching all night," the state trooper said. Truck 1, driver named Cole Wallace. His rig was found abandoned near Fort Collins. Empty. Engine running, door open. No sign of the driver. Same with trucks 2 and 3, Mason and Briggs, according to our records. Truck 5 never checked in at any way station. It's like it vanished. "I was with them," I said. We were all together, we were driving, and then... But I couldn't explain. How could I explain the loop, the light, the highway that fed on belief? They'd think I was in shock, or crazy, or worse. "Just stay where you are," the trooper said. "We're sending someone to pick you up." I waited in that rest area while the sun climbed higher in the sky. Real sun. Real ski, real world. Other trucks pulled in and out, drivers stopping for coffee or bathroom breaks or a quick nap. Normal trucks, normal drivers. Living in a world where highways went from point A to point B, and time moved forward and the sun rose in the east. A world I'd almost lost. The state patrol arrived around 9 o'clock a.m. They asked me questions I couldn't answer, took notes on a clipboard, checked my cargo and my trailer. Everything was intact. Everything was fine. I'd just had some kind of episode, they said. Exhaustion, probably. Stress. Maybe carbon monoxide from a leak in the exhaust system. They never found Cole. Never found Mason or Briggs or the Freightliner driver. Their trucks were empty, abandoned at various points along I-25. No sign of struggle. No sign of anything. Just empty cabs with engines running and doors open, and CB radios hissing static. The official report called it a mass delirium event. 5 experienced drivers, all hallucinating the same convoy, all abandoning their vehicles at roughly the same time. Possible gas leak, possible chemical spill, possible psychological contagion. They recommended I take some time off, see a therapist, get a complete medical workup. I did all those things. The therapist said I was processing trauma. The doctor said I was healthy. Time passed, and the memory of that night began to feel distant, dreamlike, unreal. But sometimes, late at night when I'm lying awake in my sleeper cab, I think about Cole's words. How some of the drivers on that endless highway had been there for decades. How they were still running, still checking in, still believing they were making progress toward a destination they'd never reach. And I wonder, when I walked away from the highway into the darkness, did I actually escape? Or am I still there, still running, still caught in the loop? Is this rest area real, or just another layer of the same trap? Is any of this real? The question haunts me more than any answer could. It's been 4 months since that convoy. I'm still driving trucks. It's all I know how to do. But I won't take overnight runs anymore. I won't drive I-25 through Colorado and Wyoming. I won't take calls from the old dispatch number, even though it doesn't ring anymore because the company folded 3 weeks after the convoy disappeared. I tell people I'm being cautious, that I'm taking care of my mental health, that I learned a valuable lesson about knowing your limits. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is that sometimes, when I'm driving during the day on a completely different route in a completely different state, I see things that shouldn't be there. A mile marker that I passed 30 minutes ago appearing again on the roadside. A truck in my rearview mirror that maintains perfect following distance no matter how much I slow down or speed up. The clock on my dashboard freezing for just a moment, just a heartbeat, at 3:33. And sometimes, late at night when I'm parked at a truck stop and scrolling through CB channels, I hear it. A convoy check-in. 1, copy. 2, copy. 3, copy. Cole's voice. Mason's voice. Briggs' voice. All still out there somewhere, still running their route. Still believing they're making progress toward Cheyenne. Still counting trucks that keep multiplying in their mirrors. I never respond. I just turn off the radio and try to sleep, though sleep doesn't come easy anymore. Because I keep asking myself the same question. If they're still out there on the loop, still running the same stretch of highway over and over, what makes me so certain that I got out? What if I'm still there too, and this, all of this, is just another layer of the dream, another reflection in the infinite mirrors. What if the rest area where the state patrol found me was just another part of the loop, and I've been driving in circles for 4 months believing I'm free? There's no way to know, no way to prove I'm really here, really awake, really in the world that follows normal rules. All I can do is keep driving and watch for the signs. The wrong mile marker, the ghost truck in my mirror, the clock that freezes at 3:33. And if I see them, when I see them, I'll have to make a choice. Do I accept it? Do I pull over and walk into the darkness again, hoping to find another exit? Or do I keep driving, keep believing in forward progress, keep checking in on schedule and maintaining my speed? I don't know what I'll do, but I think about it constantly. Last week, I was hauling a load of electronics from Phoenix to Albuquerque. Daytime run, clear weather, easy route. Everything normal. I passed mile marker 157 around noon. At 12:47, I passed it again. I told myself it was a coincidence, that I'd misread the first marker, that I was tired and imagining things, but then I passed it a third time at 1:19. I pulled over at the next exit and sat in a parking lot for 3 hours, watching other trucks pass by on the interstate. Normal trucks, normal traffic. Everything fine. But when I merged back onto the highway and drove another 30 miles, the next marker I saw was 157. I'm parked at a truck stop now, writing this down. I don't know why. Maybe because if this is real, someone should know what happened to us. Someone should know about the convoy that left Denver at midnight and never arrived in Cheyenne. Or maybe I'm writing it because I'm still in the loop, and this is just what I do in this particular iteration. Write the same account over and over, in truck stops that all look the same, while the highway waits patiently for me to merge back into traffic. There's a knock on my door. I look out the window. There's a state trooper standing there, young guy, can't be more than 30. He gestures for me to roll down the window. "Everything all right?" he asks. "Yeah, just taking a break." "You've been parked here for 6 hours. I check my dashboard. The clock reads 3:33 p.m., but I could swear it was just after 8 when I pulled in. "Sorry, I didn't realize. I'll get moving." The trooper nods, but he doesn't leave. He stands there looking at me, and there's something in his eyes that makes my blood run cold. Recognition, maybe, or pity. "Be careful out there," he says. "Highway's been strange lately. Drivers seeing things, getting confused about where they are. What kind of things?" He shrugs. Extra trucks in their mirrors, mile markers that repeat, time that doesn't move right. He pauses. "You ever experience anything like that?" I should lie. Should tell him everything's fine, I'm just tired. I'll be more careful. But instead, I hear myself say, "Yeah, I have." The trooper nods slowly. "Then you know. Once you see it, once you're aware of it, it never really lets you go. The highway, I mean. It keeps pulling at you, trying to get you back." "Get me back where?" "To the loop, to the stretch, to the place where the road feeds." He leans closer to my window. Some people fight it, try to avoid it. Stop driving at night, stick to major routes, never let their guard down. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they go years without another incident. And other times? Other times they end up right back where they started. In the convoy, in the dark, counting trucks that shouldn't exist. My hands are shaking on the steering wheel. "Are you really a state trooper?" He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "Doesn't matter, I'm here. You're here, we're having this conversation. That's real enough, isn't it?" "I want out," I say. "I want off the highway for good. I want to stop driving and find some other job, some other life. Then do it. Quit tomorrow." Walk away from trucking and never look back. Will that work? Probably not. His smile widens. The highway's patient. It'll wait. And sooner or later you'll find yourself behind the wheel again. Maybe not a big rig. Maybe just your personal vehicle, driving at night, taking a route that should be familiar but somehow isn't. And you'll see a mile marker that you recognize, even though you've never been on this road before. And you'll know. Know what? That you never really left. That the convoy's still running. That somewhere between Denver and Cheyenne, on a stretch of highway that exists in all places and no places, Cole is still in the lead truck. Mason and Briggs are still maintaining formation. And Truck 4, your truck, is still right where it's supposed to be, following the taillights ahead into the infinite dark. The trooper steps back from my window. Drive safe now. He walks away across the parking lot. I watch him go. Watch him climb into a patrol car that I somehow didn't notice before. He drives off, and I'm alone. My CB crackles. Convoy check. My hand moves to the radio dial, though I don't remember telling it to move. Everyone copy? I should turn it off. Should start my engine and drive away from this truck stop, away from this state, away from anything that reminds me of that night. But my hand is already reaching for the mic. 1. Copy. That's not Cole's voice. Or maybe it is, and I've just forgotten what he really sounded like. 2. Copy. 3. Copy. My fingers close around the mic. I lift it to my lips. This is where I should stop. This is where I should drop the mic, start the engine, break free before it's too late. But I can't, because maybe it's already too late. Maybe it was too late from the moment I answered Randall's call that Tuesday night. Maybe the convoy found me before I found it, and everything since then, the escape, the rescue, the 4 months of normal driving, has just been another loop, another layer, another way the highway feeds. 4, I say into the mic. Copy. And somewhere, in a place between mile markers and moments, the convoy continues. 5 trucks driving north from Denver to Cheyenne, maintaining formation, checking in on schedule, making progress that goes nowhere. Maybe I'm in my apartment, asleep, dreaming this. Maybe I'm still walking in that darkness beyond the highway, and this is what walking feels like when you've forgotten you're walking. Maybe I'm exactly where I think I am, parked at a truck stop in New Mexico, 4 months and 1,000 miles away from that night. Or maybe I'm in Truck 4, hands on the wheel, eyes on Briggs' taillights, watching my mirrors fill with ghost trucks that keep multiplying. And all of this, the escape, the investigation, the months of normal life, is just what the highway shows you while it digests you slowly, feeding on your hope that you got away. I'll never know for certain, but in a few minutes, I'm going to start my engine. I'm going to merge back onto the interstate, and I'm going to drive. Maybe I'll make it to my destination. Maybe I'll pass the same mile marker 100 times. Maybe the sun will rise in the west, and the clock will freeze at 3:33, and a voice on the CB will start counting trucks. All I can do is drive and watch for the signs and hope that this time, this iteration, this version of the loop, I'll recognize the exit when I see it. If I see it, if there even is one. The highway stretches ahead, dark and patient and hungry, and I'm still trying to figure out if I'm chasing my destination or if my destination has been chasing me all along. Mile marker 0. That's where we started. That's where we always start. And maybe if the highway is kind, if the loop eventually completes, if there's an end to this infinite repetition, maybe that's where we'll finish too. There's an unwritten rule in convoy trucking that nobody talks about, but everyone knows. Never volunteer to be the last truck. The guy at the back sees everything the others miss. Every pothole they dodge, every piece of debris they kick up, every bad decision that ripples down the line. You're eating everyone else's dust, literally and figuratively, and if something goes wrong, you're the first one left behind. But on the night of March 3rd, 2021, I didn't have a choice. My name's Wyatt Reeves, and I've been driving commercial freight for about 8 years. Not long enough to be a veteran, but long enough to know better than to take certain jobs. Unfortunately, 8 years also isn't long enough to build up the kind of savings that let you turn down good money when your transmission just cost you $4,000 to rebuild, and your ex-wife's lawyer is breathing down your neck about child support. So when the call came in at 10:47 p.m. asking if I could join a 4-truck convoy from Bakersfield, California to Reno, Nevada, leaving in 90 minutes, I said yes before I even asked about the rate. It's a priority shipment, the dispatcher told me. Her name was Linda, and she sounded tired. Electronics and computer components. Client needs them in Reno by 8 a.m. for some kind of product launch. We've got 3 trucks confirmed, need a 4th. You'd be running sweep. Sweep. Last position. Tail end Charlie. What's the pay? Triple rate, plus a completion bonus if the whole convoy makes it on time. I did the math. Even after taxes and fuel costs, I'd clear enough to catch up on the support payments and have some left over. I'm in. Where's the pickup? Industrial Park off Highway 99, south side of Bakersfield. Be there by midnight. Convoy lead is a guy named Dalton Pierce. He'll brief you on the route and protocol. I hung up and stared at the ceiling of my sleeper cab. Something felt off about the whole setup. Priority shipments usually got scheduled days in advance, not thrown together with 90 minutes notice, and triple rate plus a bonus meant somebody was desperate. But money was money, and I needed it. I fired up my Freightliner and headed south toward Bakersfield, arriving at the industrial park with 15 minutes to spare. 3 trucks were already there, lined up under harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out and ghostly. The lead truck was a sharp-looking Peterbilt, dark blue with chrome trim. The second was a white Kenworth, road-worn but well-maintained. The third was a Mack, older model, with primer spots on the hood where rust had been cut out. I pulled into the 4th position and climbed down to meet the others. The lead driver, Dalton, I assumed, was standing by his truck, checking something on his tablet. He was maybe 50, with the kind of lean, weathered build you get from decades of physical work. Gray stubble, deep lines around his eyes, a cat diesel cap pulled low on his head. "You the 4th?" he asked, without looking up. "Wyatt Reeves, yeah. Good, we're cutting it close." He finally looked at me, his eyes sharp and assessing. "You ever run convoy before?" "A few times. Standard protocol, right? Maintain spacing, stay on channel, check in every 30 minutes. That's the basics. But this runs a little different." He gestured to the other 2 drivers who'd walked over to join us. "That's Garrett in Truck 2, Ellis in Truck 3. We're hauling high-value electronics, which means we can't stop except for genuine emergencies. No food breaks, no fuel stops unless someone's running on fumes. Client wants continuous movement from here to Reno." "What's the route?" I asked. Dalton pulled up a map on his tablet. Highway 58 east to Barstow, then north on 395 through the Owens Valley. We'll hit Reno from the south. Total distance about 460 miles, estimated drive time 7.5 hours with convoy speeds. I studied the map. It was mostly 2-lane highway through some of the emptiest parts of California and Nevada. The Owens Valley in particular was desolate, just desert, mountains, and the occasional small town. That's a lot of dark, empty road for a night convoy. Yeah, but it's also the fastest route, and speed is what the client's paying for. Dalton looked at each of us in turn. Any questions? Garrett, truck 2, spoke up. He was younger, maybe late 20s, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested this wasn't his usual gig. What happens if someone has a mechanical problem? We assess on the spot. If it's a quick fix, we wait. If it's serious, that truck drops out and the convoy continues. The client's contract is for all 4 trucks arriving together, so there's a penalty if we show up short, but it's better than missing the deadline entirely. What if it's the lead truck? Ellis asked. He was older than all of us, probably mid-60s, with the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen it all and wasn't impressed. Then truck 2 takes lead and we keep moving. Point is, nothing stops this convoy short of a major emergency. Dalton checked his watch. We've got 10 minutes until midnight. Get your cargo checked and secured, do a final walk around on your rigs, and be ready to roll. Channel 19 for primary communication. Channel 23 for backup if we get interference. Questions? Nobody had any. I went back to my truck and did my checks. The trailer was loaded with pallets of cardboard boxes, all labeled with the same tech company logo I didn't recognize. Everything was strapped down tight, the door was sealed, the paperwork was in order. My rig was ready. At 11:58, Dalton's voice came over the CB. Final check? Everyone set? 2, ready, Garrett said. 3, good to go, Ellis confirmed. 4, ready, I said. All right, wheels up in 2 minutes. Maintain 50-foot spacing until we're clear of the city, then expand to 200 feet on the highway. Speed limit +5, no more. Stay alert, stay focused, and let's get this done. At exactly midnight, Dalton's brake lights flashed twice and his rig rolled forward. Garrett followed, then Ellis, then me. We formed a line of lights cutting through the industrial park and out onto Highway 99, heading east toward the mountains. Bakersfield fell away behind us, the city lights giving way to scattered houses and then to nothing but darkness and the occasional gas station or truck stop. We merged onto Highway 58 and the road stretched out ahead, a ribbon of asphalt barely visible beyond the reach of our headlights. I settled into position at the back of the convoy, watching Ellis's taillights bob and weave with the road's gentle curves. The spacing was good, the speed was consistent, and the CB was quiet except for the soft hiss of static. For the first hour, everything was routine. We passed through the town of Buttonwillow, then Mettler, small collections of lights that appeared and disappeared in the darkness. The road began to climb, winding up into the Tehachapi Mountains, and I downshifted to maintain speed. My rig handled the grade well, the engine humming with the steady power that comes from a fresh rebuild. At 12:30, Dalton called for the first check-in. Convoy check. 1, status. 1, all systems green. 2, good. Seeing some wind-up here, but nothing serious. 3, no issues. 4, all good, I said. Roger. Next check at 1 o'clock, keep it tight. I glanced at my mirrors, habit more than anything else. The road behind me was empty, just darkness and the occasional reflector post catching my taillights. No other traffic. We had this stretch of highway to ourselves. At 12:47, we crested the Tehachapi Pass and started the long descent toward the Mojave Desert. The grade was steep, and I let the engine brake do most of the work, keeping my foot light on the actual brakes to avoid overheating them. In the distance, I could see Dalton's headlights far ahead, a beacon leading us down the mountain. At 12:53, something caught my attention in the rearview mirror. Headlights. Far back, maybe a mile or more, but definitely there. A vehicle had pulled onto the highway behind us, following the same route. I keyed the CB. 4th out of Convoy. We've got company. Single vehicle. Looks like a car or small truck about a mile back. Copy, 4. Dalton said. Could be someone heading to Barstow. Just maintain speed and spacing. If they want to pass, let them through. Roger. I watched the headlights in my mirror. They were getting closer, steadily gaining on us. Whoever it was, they were driving fast. Probably 10 or 15 over the limit. I expected them to catch up within a few minutes, flash their brights impatiently and blow past us into the night. But they didn't. The headlights got close, maybe a quarter-mile back, and then stayed there, matching our speed exactly, maintaining that fixed distance. At 1 o'clock, Dalton called for the check-in. We all responded normally. I almost mentioned the car again, but decided against it. It wasn't doing anything wrong, just following at a distance. Probably someone being cautious around a convoy of big rigs on a dark, winding highway. At 1:17, we reached Mojave, a small desert town that existed mainly to service Edwards Air Force Base. The convoy didn't slow down, just rolled straight through on the main drag, past closed gas stations and dark houses. I caught a glimpse of a 24-hour diner, its neon sign buzzing in the window, and felt a pang of hunger. I'd skipped dinner to make the midnight deadline. The headlights were still behind me, still maintaining that same quarter-mile distance. At 1:34, Garrett's voice crackled over the CB. 2 to lead. I'm seeing some weird readings on my gauges. Oil pressure's fluctuating. Can you make it to Reno? Dalton asked. I think so. Just wanted to report it. Keep monitoring. If it gets worse, call it in immediately. Copy. I watched Truck 2 ahead of me, looking for any sign of trouble. Smoke, weaving, a drop in speed. But Garrett was holding his position, maintaining pace with Ellis and Dalton. At 1:41, I looked in my mirrors again. The headlights behind me were closer. Much closer. Maybe 100 yards back now, close enough that I could make out the shape of the vehicle. A pickup truck. Dark-colored, though it was hard to tell for certain in the darkness. And it was still matching our speed, still maintaining that fixed distance, like it was attached to my bumper by an invisible rope. 4 to Convoy, I said. That vehicle behind us is getting close. Might want to let them pass when the road widens. Copy, 4. There's a passing lane in about 5 miles. If they haven't gone by then, they're just tagging along. 5 miles passed. The road widened into a passing lane, and I moved slightly to the right to give the pickup room to go around. It didn't pass, it just moved to the right with me, staying in my blind spot, still maintaining that 100-yard gap. I felt the first prickle of unease. This wasn't normal driving behavior. If you're in a hurry, you pass. If you're not in a hurry, you fall back and give yourself more room. You don't tailgate a convoy of semi-trucks through the desert at 2 in the morning. 4 to lead. That pickup's not passing, just staying behind me. Probably someone using us to set their speed, Dalton said. Don't worry about it unless they get aggressive. At 1:52, we turned north onto Highway 395, leaving the last traces of the civilization behind. This was the Owens Valley, 150 miles of empty desert flanked by the Sierra Nevada mountains to the west and the Inyo Mountains to the east. No towns, no services, just endless darkness, and the distant silhouettes of peaks against the starry sky. The pickup was still there, still following, and I was starting to feel like prey being stalked. At 2 o'clock, during the check-in, I mentioned it again. 4 to lead, that vehicle's still on our 6, been following for over an hour now. There was a pause, then Dalton's voice. You're sure it's the same vehicle? Positive. Same headlight pattern, same distance. It's not moving up or falling back. Another pause. Ellis, can you see anything behind 4? Negative, Ellis said. I'm watching my mirrors. I see 4's taillights, but nothing beyond that. I frowned. How could Ellis not see the pickup? It was right there, headlights blazing, close enough that I could see the reflection off my trailer. 4, you feeling all right? Dalton asked. You tired? I'm fine, I said, though my hands were getting tense on the wheel. Wide awake, and I'm telling you, there's a pickup truck following this convoy. Garrett, you got anything? Negative, lead. Can't see anything but Ellis ahead of me. All right, 4. I'm going to chalk this up to headlight glare, or maybe an optical illusion from the road. If the truck does something aggressive, report it immediately. Otherwise, ignore it and focus on maintaining your position. Copy, I said, though I didn't like it. The miles ticked by, 2:15, 2:30, 2:45. The pickup never wavered, never moved, never did anything except follow me at that fixed distance like my shadow had learned to drive. At 2:48, my CB crackled with interference. A burst of static that resolved into something that might have been a voice. I couldn't make out words, but the cadence was there. Someone trying to communicate. Anyone else getting interference on the channel? I asked. Negative, Dalton said. Clear here, Garrett added. Ellis didn't respond. 3, you copy? Dalton asked. Still no response. Ellis, respond immediately. A burst of static, then Ellis's voice sounding distant and distorted. Copy. All good here. You sound like you're breaking up. Check your radio. Roger. But Ellis's voice faded back into static before he could say more. I watched Truck 3 ahead of me, looking for any sign of trouble. But his taillights were steady. His spacing was good. He was right where he should be. At 2:53, I made the mistake of looking at my side mirror instead of my rear view. The pickup was still there, but now I could see it more clearly, and something was wrong with it. The headlights weren't quite right. They flickered and pulsed in a way that normal headlights didn't. And the shape of the vehicle seemed to shift and blur at the edges, like I was looking at it through heat shimmer even though the desert night was cold. I tore my eyes away and focused on the road ahead, my heart pounding. It's just fatigue, I told myself. Just my eyes playing tricks. Long night, dark road, too much coffee, and not enough sleep. But I knew that wasn't true. At 3 o'clock, Dalton called for another check-in. 1, all systems green. 2, oil pressure still fluctuating, but manageable. 3, Ellis's voice was clearer now. 3, no issues. 4, I hesitated. Should I mention the pickup again? Should I tell them what I'd seen in the mirror? The impossible headlights, the shifting shape. 4, respond. Copy, I said. All good. But it wasn't all good. Something was very wrong, and I was the only one who could see it. At 3:17, we passed through the town of Lone Pine, a small cluster of buildings sleeping in the darkness beneath the shadow of Mount Whitney. The convoy didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just rolled through like we were invisible. The pickup followed us through town, still maintaining that 100-yard distance, still pulsing with those wrong headlights. At 3:22, my CB crackled again, and this time the voice that came through was clear. It was my voice. 4 to Convoy, my voice said, though I wasn't touching the mic. I see it now. I understand. I grabbed the CB, my hands shaking. That's not me. I'm not transmitting. Dalton's voice came back. 4, you just reported in. What do you mean it's not you? I didn't key my mic. Someone's using my call sign. 4, calm down. Nobody's using your... 4 to Convoy. My voice interrupted again. Perfectly calm, perfectly steady. The last truck always sees it first. That's the rule. Sees what? I shouted at the radio, though I knew the voice couldn't hear me. Or maybe it could. Maybe it heard everything I thought, everything I felt. 4, you're breaking up, Dalton said. Repeat your last... The transmission cut off, replaced by static. I looked in my rearview mirror. The pickup was right there, 100 yards back, those flickering headlights illuminating the inside of my cab with a pulsing, sickly light. And for just a moment, I saw the driver. It was me, sitting behind the wheel of that impossible pickup truck, hands at 10 and 2, eyes locked on the back of my trailer. My own face, expressionless, watching myself with the cold intensity of a predator studying prey. I jerked my eyes back to the road, my whole body shaking. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. I was losing my mind, hallucinating, experiencing some kind of psychotic break brought on by stress and exhaustion. But when I looked in the mirror again, the pickup was still there, and my doppelganger was still driving it, still following me through the endless desert night. At 3:30, Dalton called for another check-in. His voice sounded distant now, like he was calling from very far away. 1. Status. Static washed over the channel, making his words almost unintelligible. 2. Oil pressure. Critical. More static. 3. Ellis's voice was fading in and out. Can't. Much longer. And then clear as a bell. 4 to Convoy. The last truck always sees it first, because the last truck is already alone. I didn't say that. I hadn't touched my mic, but the voice was mine, and the words rang with a terrible truth that I didn't want to acknowledge. At 3:47, I realized I couldn't see Truck 3 anymore. Ellis's taillights were gone. The road ahead was empty, just darkness and the center line stretching into infinity. I grabbed the CB. 4 to Convoy. I've lost visual on 3. Where is everyone? No response, just static. Lead, respond. Garrett, Ellis, someone respond. The static resolved into my own voice. You're alone now. You've been alone for a while, you just didn't want to admit it. That's not true. I can see, but what could I see? I looked out my windshield, searching for any sign of the convoy, and found nothing. No taillights ahead, no headlights in my mirrors except for the pickup that couldn't be real. No, wait. The pickup. I looked at my mirrors, and the truck was closer now. 50 yards back. Close enough that I could see the details, the make and model that exactly matched my personal pickup, the one I'd left parked in a storage lot 3 states away. The license plate that bore my registration. And behind the wheel, I could see myself clearly now. Not a reflection, not a trick of light. Another me, another Wyatt Reeves, driving another truck through another version of this same dark highway. At 4 SOG, though I wasn't sure time meant anything anymore, my CB crackled with Dalton's voice. But it sounded wrong, distorted, like a recording played at the wrong speed. Convoy check. Everyone, status. I opened my mouth to respond, but my doppelganger beat me to it. 4, all good, my voice said through the CB. Maintaining position, no issues. You're not me, I shouted at the radio. But maybe I was. Maybe that was the truth I'd been avoiding. Maybe I was the one following, not the one being followed. Maybe I'd been the ghost truck all along, trailing a convoy that had left me behind hours ago, too stubborn or too stupid to realize I was already gone. The highway stretched on into darkness, and I drove into it, watching my mirrors, watching myself follow myself through a desert that had no end, as part of a convoy that may have never existed at all. And somewhere ahead, or maybe behind, or maybe in some direction that had no name, the other trucks drove on, unaware that their 4th position had been empty for miles. Or maybe they knew. Maybe they'd always known. Maybe that's why nobody volunteers to be the last truck in line. The sun should have started rising by now. I checked my dashboard clock, 4:47 a.m., and did the math. We'd left Bakersfield at midnight. Nearly 5 hours of driving through the Owens Valley, which meant we should be approaching the Nevada border, and the eastern sky should be showing at least a hint of gray, the promise of dawn. But when I looked out my windshield, the darkness was absolute. No stars, no moon, no distant glow of civilization. Just black emptiness that pressed against my headlights like a physical thing, like I was driving through ink. The pickup truck behind me was still there. Closer now, maybe 30 yards back. Close enough that I could see my own reflection in its windshield, though that didn't make sense geometrically. But nothing made sense anymore, so I'd stopped trying to rationalize it. My CB had been silent for over 20 minutes. No check-ins from Dalton, no nervous chatter from Garrett, no calm confirmations from Ellis. Just static and the occasional burst of interference that sounded like words played backward. I tried one more time. 4 to Convoy. Anyone copy? The static shifted, and for a moment I thought I heard something. A voice, maybe multiple voices, all talking at once in a language I didn't recognize. Then it faded back into white noise. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had gone white. My shoulders ached from tension, and I realized I hadn't relaxed my posture in over an hour. I forced myself to take a deep breath, to loosen my grip, to think logically about the situation. The facts. I was driving north on Highway 395. I'd lost visual contact with the rest of the convoy. My radio communications were failing. There was a vehicle following me that couldn't possibly be real. The logical conclusion: I needed to stop. Pull over, assess the situation, maybe wait for daylight before continuing. The delivery deadline be damned. No amount of money was worth this level of psychological stress. I started looking for a place to pull off. The highway shoulder was narrow here, barely wide enough for a car, definitely not safe for a semi. But there had to be a turnout somewhere, a rest area, some widening of the road where I could get my rig completely off the pavement. At 4:53, I spotted a dirt road branching off to the right. It looked like it might be a Forest Service road or a Bureau of Land Management access point. I slowed down, flipped on my turn signal, though who I was signaling to, I had no idea, and started to ease my rig onto the shoulder. The pickup truck behind me matched my deceleration exactly. I stopped signaling and accelerated back to highway speed. The pickup accelerated with me, maintaining that 30-yard gap. I tried again, this time without signaling. Sudden braking, tires squealing slightly, the whole rig shuddering as I fought to keep it stable. The shoulder rushed up fast, and I had to swerve back onto the highway to avoid clipping a reflector post. The pickup never wavered. It slowed when I slowed, sped up when I sped up, its distance from my bumper fixed as precisely as if we were connected by a metal rod. "All right," I said out loud, my voice sounding strange in the silence of my cab. "All right, you want to play it this way? Fine. Let's see how you handle this." I floored the accelerator. My Freightliner wasn't built for speed, but with the engine fully rebuilt and a relatively light load, I could push it harder than recommended. The speedometer crept up, 60, 65, 70. The steering wheel vibrated in my hands, and I could hear the trailer behind me protesting the speed, but I kept my foot down. The pickup stayed right behind me, matching my speed, those impossible headlights never wavering. 75. 80. The road was arrow straight here, which was the only thing keeping me alive. At this speed, even a gentle curve would be dangerous. The pickup didn't fall back. If anything, it seemed to be getting closer, cutting the gap from 30 yards to 25 to 20. At 83 miles per hour, I saw something ahead that made my blood freeze. Tail lights. 3 sets of them, evenly spaced, moving at normal convoy speed. The convoy, my convoy. Still running, still maintaining formation, still completely unaware that I'd fallen behind. Or Had I fallen behind? The thought struck me like a physical blow. What if I'd never caught up in the first place? What if I'd been chasing them all night, always 30 seconds behind, always just out of radio range, driving faster and faster, trying to close a gap that couldn't be closed? I eased off the accelerator, watching the taillights ahead. They were getting closer, which meant I was definitely going faster than they were. In a few minutes, I'd catch up to Truck 3, Ellis's rig, and everything would make sense again. I'd be back in formation, back in the convoy, and this whole nightmare would be over. The pickup truck behind me slowed down with me, maintaining its fixed distance. I was within a quarter mile of the convoy when Ellis's taillights flickered. Just once. Just for a second. But in that flicker I saw something that didn't make sense. The truck wasn't a Mack. It was a Peterbilt. Dalton's Peterbilt. I blinked, and when I looked again, it was a Mack again. Ellis's truck. Everything normal, but I'd seen what I'd seen. I closed the gap to 50 yards, then 25. Then I was right behind Truck 3, close enough to read the license plate, close enough to see the wear on the mud flaps. And the truck flickered again. Peterbilt, then Mack, then Kenworth, then back to Mack. Cycling through all three trucks in the convoy like a shuffled deck of cards, never settling, never staying consistent. I grabbed my CB mic. 4-3, Ellis, you copy. The truck ahead of me, whatever it really was, didn't respond. But its taillights flashed 3 times in rapid succession. Not a brake tap, not a turn signal, just flashing, like Morse code, like a warning. I dropped back, putting some space between us. The truck stopped flickering and settled back into being Ellis's Mack. Steady. Normal. Except I knew it wasn't normal at all. At 5:07 a.m., my dashboard clock suddenly jumped forward to 5:33. I stared at it, watched the minutes tick forward normally, 5:34, 5:35, but I'd lost 26 minutes somewhere. 26 minutes that had just vanished, skipped like a scratched CD. "For to convoy," I said into the CB, not really expecting a response. "Time anomaly. My clock just jumped forward. Anyone else experiencing? Check in." Dalton's voice cut through the static. 1, status. 1, all green. Dalton responded to himself. 2, status. 2, oil pressure has stabilized, Garrett said. But his voice sounded flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a script. 3, status. 3, no issues, Ellis said in that same flat tone. 4, status. I waited for my own voice to respond, for my doppelganger in the pickup to claim my position, but there was only silence. 4, respond immediately, Dalton said. More silence. 4 is non-responsive, Dalton said. Continuing with 3-truck convoy, next check at 0600. The radio went quiet. They couldn't hear me. Or they could hear me, but they thought someone else was Truck 4. Or there was no Truck 4 anymore, had never been a Truck 4, and I was just a ghost following them through the darkness. I looked in my rearview mirror. The pickup was still there, still following, and now I could see the driver clearly, illuminated by the glow of the dashboard lights. It was me, but not quite. Close enough to pass as my reflection, but wrong in small ways. The set of the jaw was different. The eyes were too wide, too intense. The hands on the wheel were positioned at 11 and 1 instead of 10 and 2. And it was smiling. I don't smile when I drive. Nobody does. But this thing wearing my face was grinning like it knew a secret, like it was in on a joke that I hadn't figured out yet. I forced myself to look away, to focus on the road ahead. The convoy was still there, 3 trucks in formation, taillights bobbing gently with the road's subtle curves. Real or not, they were all I had to follow. At 5:41, the road started to feel different. The pavement was the same, the center line was the same, but something about the space around the highway had changed. The darkness seemed deeper, more textured, like it had substance, like I was driving through something instead of just through empty night. At 5:48, I passed a mile marker. It read, Mile 0. That was impossible. Mile markers started at 0 at the state line, but we'd crossed from California into Nevada hours ago. We should be well past mile marker 100 by now. I kept driving, watching for the next marker. Mile 0, and the next one. Mile 0. Every single marker on the side of the road read Mile 0, like the highway had been caught in a loop, unable to progress, trapped at the starting point forever. At 5:52, Truck 3's taillights went out, completely dark. The truck was still there. I could see its silhouette against the slightly less dark darkness, but all its lights had died simultaneously. 3 to Convoy. Ellis's voice crackled over the CB. Electrical failure. Losing all systems. I'm going to have to pull. His voice cut off mid-word. The silhouette of Truck 3 began to fade, becoming transparent, and I could see through it to Truck 2 beyond. Garrett's Kenworth, running steady, lights bright, and then Truck 3 was gone, just vanished, evaporating into the darkness like it had never existed. I slammed on my brakes, my rig shuddering and groaning. I came to a stop in the middle of the highway, hazard lights flashing, and stared at the empty space where Ellis's truck should have been. The pickup behind me stopped too, maintaining that exact distance. I grabbed my CB. 4 to Convoy. Truck 3 just disappeared. Ellis is gone. No response. Dalton, Garrett, someone respond. Ellis vanished right in front of me. Static, then Convoy check. 1, status. 1, all green. 2, status. 2, no issues. Continuing with 2 truck Convoy. Next check at 0630. They were down to 2 trucks now. They'd acknowledged the loss of Truck 3 without any concern, without any alarm, like it was routine, like it had been planned. I sat there in the middle of the highway, hazards flashing, trying to decide what to do. I could keep following the convoy, knowing that trucks were disappearing, knowing that I might be next. Or I could turn around, head back to Bakersfield, and forget this entire nightmare run. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, the pickup was still there, blocking my retreat. And behind it, the road had changed. Instead of asphalt stretching back the way I'd come, there was just darkness. Void, nothing. The highway only went one direction now. Forward. I put my rig in gear and started moving again, accelerating until I caught sight of Truck 2's taillights ahead. Garrett's Kenworth running steady, unaware that we'd lost Ellis, unaware that the convoy was fracturing, or maybe completely aware and just not caring. At 6 o'clock, I was close enough to see details on Truck 2. The mud flaps, the license plate, the wear patterns on the trailer doors. Everything looked normal, real, solid. Then Garrett's truck flickered just like Ellis's had. Peterbilt, then Kenworth, then nothing, then Kenworth again. Unstable. Failing. 4 to 2, I said into the CB. Garrett, if you can hear me, you need to... Convoy check. Dalton's voice interrupted. 1, status. 1, all green. 2, status, silence. 2, respond immediately. More silence. 2 is non-responsive. Continuing with single truck, next check at 0700. Single truck. Dalton was acknowledging that he was alone now. The convoy had collapsed down to just the lead vehicle, and he was going to complete the run by himself. Or maybe he'd always been alone. Maybe the convoy had never existed, and we'd all just been shadows following him, believing we were part of something real. I watched Truck 2 ahead of me. It was flickering faster now, cycling through different forms every few seconds. Kenworth. Peterbilt, Mack. Something that wasn't any truck I recognized. Something with too many wheels and lights that didn't belong on any vehicle. And then, at 6:04, it disappeared. One moment it was there, solid and real. The next moment, nothing. Just empty highway, and the distant taillights of Truck 1, miles ahead now, pulling away faster than I could possibly catch up. I was alone. No, not alone. I looked in my mirror, and the pickup was still there, closer than ever. Maybe 20 yards back now, close enough that I could see my doppelganger's eyes in the rearview mirror, see the wrongness in them, see the hunger. "You're not me," I said out loud. The CB crackled. My voice came through. "Are you sure? How do you know which one of us is real? I'm driving my truck. I'm in my body. I'm real. Or I'm driving my truck, and you're the shadow. You're the thing that follows. You're the ghost that doesn't know it's dead. I'm not dead. Then why can't they hear you? Why did they drop you from the convoy count? Why are you still here when everyone else has moved on?" I didn't have an answer to that. At 6:17, I passed another mile marker. Still mile 0. At 6:23, my fuel gauge dropped to empty. Just dropped, instantly, from 3/4 full to the red line. But the engine kept running, didn't sputter, didn't show any sign of fuel starvation. At 6:29, I caught up to Truck 1. Dalton's Peterbilt, running steady in the darkness. The last real truck in the convoy. Or maybe not real at all, maybe just as much a phantom as the others. I pulled up alongside him, matching his speed, looking over at his cab. I could see him through the window, lean, weathered face, cat diesel cap, eyes fixed on the road ahead, not acknowledging me, not even glancing in my direction. I honked my horn. 3 long blasts that should have been impossible to ignore. He didn't react, just kept driving, steady as a metronome like I wasn't there at all. I grabbed my CB. 4 to lead, Dalton, I'm right next to you. Look over, I'm here. No response. I honked again, longer this time, laying on the horn until my hand hurt. Dalton's truck flickered. For just a second, I saw through it to the empty highway beyond. Then it solidified again. Real and present, but I knew the truth now. It was failing, fading. Soon it would disappear like the others, and I'd be truly alone on this endless highway. At 6:30, Dalton called for the convoy check. 1, status. 1, all green. Continuing solo to Reno. ETA 0700. Reno. He still thought he was going to Reno. Still believed in the delivery, the deadline, the reality of the run. I wanted to shake him, to make him see that we weren't going to Reno, that we weren't going anywhere, that we were trapped in a loop between mile markers that all read 0. But I couldn't reach him. He was in his own version of this nightmare, following his own GPS, believing his own instruments, completely unaware that I was right next to him. At 6:34, his truck started to fade. Slowly at first, becoming slightly transparent, then more so, until I could see the road through him, the center line running straight through the middle of his trailer. "Dalton!" I shouted into the CB. "Hold on! Don't let it take you!" But he was already gone. The Peterbilt evaporated into nothing, and I was alone on the highway with only the pickup truck behind me for company. I slowed down, stopped, sat in the middle of the road with my engine idling and my hands shaking on the wheel. The pickup pulled up behind me and stopped, maintaining that perfect distance. I could see my doppelganger clearly now. It was me, exactly me, down to the scar on my left eyebrow from a childhood bike accident. But its eyes were wrong, too knowing, too aware. It lifted one hand from the wheel and pointed forward, down the highway, into the darkness. The message was clear. Keep driving. That's all there is. That's all there's ever been. I looked at my dashboard. The clock read 6:47 a.m. The sun should have been up an hour ago, should be painting the desert in shades of gold and orange. But the darkness was absolute, eternal, and I was alone in it except for my own shadow. At 6:52, I put the truck in gear and started driving again. Because what else could I do? The highway stretched ahead, identical to every mile I'd already driven, identical to every mile I would ever drive. Mile marker 0 repeated endlessly on both sides of the road, and in my mirror, the pickup followed. Always there, always watching, always waiting for me to realize the truth. That I was the last truck in line, and the last truck is always alone. Time had lost all meaning. My dashboard clock cycled through random numbers. 6:47, then 3:22, then 9:15, then back to 3:33. It would freeze for long stretches, then jump forward or backward in chunks that made no sense. I stopped trying to track it. The darkness never changed. No hint of dawn, no stars, no moon, just black emptiness beyond the reach of my headlights, and the highway rolling out beneath me like a treadmill, going nowhere forever. I'd been driving for what felt like hours since Dalton's truck disappeared, or maybe minutes, or maybe days. Without external reference points, without the passage of the sun or the changing of the landscape, there was no way to measure time's passage except by the slow deterioration of my own mind. The pickup truck was still behind me, always behind me. My doppelganger drove with inhuman patience, never speeding up, never falling back, never showing any sign of fatigue or boredom or doubt. I'd tried everything to lose it. Sudden accelerations, hard braking, weaving across both lanes, even driving with my lights off for a terrifying minute that nearly sent me off the road. Nothing worked. The pickup matched every maneuver perfectly, like it was reading my thoughts before I executed them. Maybe it was. At some point, the clock read 4:17, though that meant nothing. I tried an experiment. I said out loud, without touching the CB, "If you can hear me, flash your lights 3 times." The pickup's headlights flashed. 1, 2, 3. My heart sank. It wasn't just following me, it was listening, watching, aware of everything I did, everything I thought. "What are you?" I asked the darkness. The CB crackled. My voice came through. "I'm what you become when you realize the truth. I'm the part of you that understands this highway never ends, that the convoy was always a fiction, that you've been alone from the beginning. I'm waiting for you to accept it." "Accept what?" "That you're already me. You're already here. This conversation you think you're having it with yourself. I'm not following you. You're remembering me. You're looking back at where you've already been." I punched the steering wheel hard enough to hurt my hand. "That doesn't make any sense. I'm here now, driving north. I'm heading somewhere." "Where? Name your destination." "Reno, the delivery. The client needs—" "What client? What company? What cargo are you carrying?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. I knew I was hauling electronics, computer components, something for a product launch. But I couldn't visualize the boxes, couldn't recall the company name from the paperwork, couldn't remember a single specific detail about what was in my trailer. "It's in the manifest," I said. "The paperwork. It's all there. Then look at it. Pull over and check your paperwork. Tell me what it says." I didn't want to stop. Stopping felt dangerous, like if I lost my momentum I'd never start moving again. But I also couldn't shake the growing dread that the voice was right, that I'd been hauling nothing, heading nowhere since the beginning. I pulled over onto the shoulder. There was plenty of room now, the road having widened at some point to accommodate vehicles much larger than mine. I put the truck in park, left the engine running, and grabbed my clipboard from the passenger seat. The manifest was there, multiple pages clipped together. I flipped to the cargo description. The page was blank. Not empty. Blank. Like it had never been printed on. Just clean white paper with the header and footer, but no text in between. I flipped through the other pages. Bill of lading, blank. Route instructions, blank. Client contact information, blank. Every single page was empty. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't right." There was information here. I read it. I checked the cargo against the manifest before we left. "Did you?" my voice asked from the CB. "Or did you just go through the motions? Did you actually read the words? Or did you just see what you expected to see?" I threw the clipboard across the cab. It hit the passenger window and clattered to the floor. In my mirror, the pickup had pulled over behind me, maintaining that exact distance. My doppelganger sat motionless behind the wheel, watching me. Waiting. I climbed out of my cab. I shouldn't have done it. Every instinct screamed that leaving the safety of my truck was a mistake. But I had to know. Had to see what was in my trailer. Had to prove that I was carrying something. That this run had purpose and meaning. The air outside was perfectly still. No wind, no sound except the idle of my engine. The temperature was neither hot nor cold. It simply was, neutral and unremarkable. I walked back to my trailer, my boots echoing on the asphalt in a way that sounded wrong. The sound didn't fade properly, didn't dissipate into the distance. It just stopped, cut off sharply, like the darkness was absorbing it. The trailer door was sealed. A numbered plastic tag looped through the latch. I examined it in my flashlight beam. The number matched the one on my blank manifest, 47593. At least that was consistent. I broke the seal and opened the door. The trailer was empty. Completely, absolutely empty. No pallets, no boxes, no cargo of any kind. Just a hollow aluminum box with tie-down points and wheel wells and nothing else. I stood there staring into the empty space, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness inside, illuminating nothing. "You're hauling shadows," my voice said from somewhere behind me. "That's all this convoy ever carried. Shadows and darkness and the belief that we were going somewhere." I turned around. My doppelganger had gotten out of the pickup and was standing about 20 feet away, hands in pockets, perfectly relaxed. Up close, in the beam of my flashlight, I could see the differences more clearly. This thing looked like me, moved like me, sounded like me, but it was hollow somehow, like a photograph instead of a person. Two-dimensional, a projection. "What happened to us?" I asked. "To the convoy? To me? You want the truth, or the version that lets you keep believing you're still alive?" "The truth." My doppelganger smiled. "There is no truth. There's only what you choose to believe. But I'll tell you what I believe, which is maybe the same as truth in a place like this." It started walking toward me. I held my ground, though every nerve in my body screamed to run. "I believe we never left Bakersfield," it said. "I believe something happened in that industrial park at midnight. Something wrong, something impossible. And we've been stuck in the moment ever since. We're hauling empty trailers through empty darkness, following phantom trucks driven by phantom drivers, all of us trapped in the same loop. Then why am I the only one who sees it? Why didn't the others? Who says you're the only one? Maybe Dalton knew. Maybe they all knew. Maybe everyone in that convoy was having this exact same conversation with their own shadow. All of us simultaneously aware and unaware. All of us driving toward a destination that recedes faster than we can approach it. It was right in front of me now, close enough to touch. I could see my own reflection in its eyes. Or maybe I was the reflection, and it was real, and I'd gotten them confused. The last truck sees it first because the last truck is furthest from the lie, it continued. You're at the back, so you're the first to notice when the convoy starts to unravel. But eventually, everyone sees it. Everyone realizes. And then they fade, one by one, until only the shadow remains. I don't accept that. There has to be a way out. There has to be. There is. You're looking at it. It held out its hand. An offering, an invitation. Stop fighting, it said gently. Stop trying to drive toward Reno or back to Bakersfield or anywhere else. Accept that the highway is all there is, all there ever was. Stop being the man who's lost and become the shadow that knows the way. What way? You just said there's no destination. There's no destination outside, but there might be one inside. In the acceptance and the surrender, in becoming what you're meant to become in this place. I looked at the outstretched hand. My own hand, offering me salvation or damnation, I couldn't tell which. Behind my doppelganger I could see the pickup truck, and behind that, the highway stretched into infinite darkness. No mile markers now, no center line, just black emptiness that went on forever. I thought about Dalton, fading away while still believing he was heading to Reno. I thought about Garrett and Ellis, disappearing while still trusting their instruments, still following protocol. They'd fought it. They'd maintained the fiction until the end, and I could do the same. I could get back in my truck, put it in gear, and drive forever through this darkness, hauling nothing toward nowhere, but at least maintaining the belief that I was going somewhere, that I had purpose, that I was still real. Or I could take the hand, accept the truth, become the shadow. At least the shadow knew what it was. My hand started to reach out. My fingers were inches from my doppelganger's palm. And then I heard it. A horn. Distant, faint, but definitely there. A truck horn blaring 3 times in rapid succession. I jerked my hand back and spun around, looking down the highway in the direction I'd been traveling. Far in the distance, barely visible, I could see lights, tail lights, multiple sets of them moving together in formation. The convoy. "That's not real," my doppelganger said. Its voice had changed, become urgent, almost desperate. "It's a trick, a reflection. They're gone. You saw them disappear. But the lights were getting brighter, which meant they were getting closer. Or I was getting closer to them. The distance was collapsing. The horn blared again. 3 short blasts. An invitation or a warning, I couldn't tell which. "If you go toward them, you'll just loop back to the beginning," my doppelganger said. "You'll be right back here having this same conversation, making this same choice. The highway doesn't let you escape. It only lets you choose how you experience the trap." "Maybe," I said. "But I'd rather be trapped trying to reach something than trapped accepting nothing." I ran back to my cab, yanked open the door, and threw myself into the driver's seat. My hands fumbled with the gear shift, and I could hear my doppelganger shouting something behind me. But I didn't listen. I slammed the door, put the truck in gear, and floored the accelerator. The engine roared, the truck lurched forward, and in my rearview mirror I saw my doppelganger standing in the middle of the highway, getting smaller and smaller, until the darkness swallowed it completely. The pickup truck was gone. The road behind me was empty. I drove toward the distant taillights, and they grew closer with every second. I could make out individual trucks now, 3 of them, running in formation, exactly where they should be. My CB crackled to life. "Status check," Dalton's voice, clear and steady. "1, all green. 2, no issues, Garrett said. 3, maintaining position, Ellis confirmed. A long pause, then 4, Hayes, you copy. I grabbed the mic, my hand shaking. 4, copy, I'm here, I'm right behind you. Another pause, longer this time. Hayes, where the hell have you been? You dropped off comms for over an hour. An hour, May. We've been trying to raise you. I looked at my dashboard clock. It read 6:52 a.m., the same time it had read when I'd gotten out of my truck to check the trailer. No time had passed, or all time had passed, or time had fractured and reformed and I'd slipped through a crack in it. Had some radio trouble, I said. But I'm good now, back in position. Copy that, stay tight. We're 20 minutes out from Reno. I looked out my windshield. The darkness was fading, just at the edges a gray twilight creeping in from the east. And on the horizon I could see lights. Real lights, city lights, Reno, glowing in the pre-dawn darkness like a promise. We were almost there. We were going to make it. I glanced in my rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. No pickup truck, no doppelganger. Just normal highway with normal mile markers and the first hints of approaching dawn. I'd made it through. I'd escaped, or had I? Because as I watched the convoy ahead of me, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were only 3 trucks. Dalton, Garrett, Ellis. Trucks 1, 2, and 3. Where was I in the formation? I was following truck 3, maintaining proper distance, running in the 4th position. But if there were only 3 trucks in the convoy and I was the 4th truck... 4 to convoy, I said slowly. Quick count check. How many trucks do we have? 3 trucks, Dalton responded immediately. 1, 2, 3, why? Just confirming, I said. I looked at my mirrors again. Behind me, the highway was empty. No truck 4, no Wyatt Reeves hauling electronics to Reno. Because I was truck 4, and truck 4 had been missing for over an hour. Which meant the CB crackled. My own voice came through. You chose to keep driving. That's all you needed to do. Accept the pattern. Follow the lights. Don't ask questions. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because I was starting to understand. The doppelganger hadn't been trying to trap me. It had been trying to warn me. By refusing to accept what I'd become, by choosing to chase the convoy instead of surrendering to the truth, I'd locked myself into a different kind of loop. One where I'd follow these 3 trucks forever, always maintaining position, always checking in, always convinced I was heading toward Reno even though Reno would never arrive. The city lights on the horizon weren't getting closer. They were staying at the same distance, perfectly fixed, a mirage that would never resolve into reality. And I'd drive toward them forever, following tail lights that might or might not be real, checking in on a radio that might or might not be broadcasting, hauling cargo that might or might not exist. The last truck in line, always watching, always following, always alone, even when surrounded by the convoy. At 7:04 a.m., Dalton called for a status check. 1, all green. 2, no issues. 3, maintaining position. And I responded right on cue. 4, copy, all good. Because that's what I do now. That's what I've always done. That's what I'll do forever. Follow the pattern. Follow the lights. Don't ask questions. The last truck sees it first. But seeing doesn't mean escaping. It just means you understand what you've become. The city lights never got closer. I'd been watching them for what my clock said was 15 minutes, but what felt like hours. And they remained fixed on the horizon like a painting, perfectly detailed but utterly unreachable. We passed mile marker 174, then 175, then 176. Real numbers now. Real progress. Except when I checked my GPS, it showed us still at mile marker 152. The same reading it had shown for the past 20 minutes. The instruments lie, or they tell the truth. There's no way to know which anymore. The sky was getting lighter, a dull, gray illumination that didn't come from any particular direction. Not a sunrise, just a lessening of the absolute darkness, like someone had turned up a dimmer switch fractionally. It was enough to see the landscape now, flat, desert, scrubland stretching to distant mountains, the same view I'd been seeing all night. Or maybe not the same. I couldn't shake the feeling that the mountains had changed position, that the scrub brush looked subtly different than it had the last time I'd noticed it. At 7:21, Garrett's voice came over the CB, and he sounded worried. 2 to lead. I'm getting some weird readings. Fuel gauge is showing empty, but the engine's running fine. Temperature's fluctuating, and my GPS keeps resetting. Copy, 2. Same issues here, Dalton said. I think we're experiencing some kind of electromagnetic interference, probably from the military base. We're close to the Nevada test site. That made sense. Or it would have made sense on a normal run, on a normal night. But nothing about this was normal, and we all knew it, even if only I was willing to admit it. Stay on visual, Dalton continued. Ignore the instruments and just follow the truck ahead of you. We can't be more than 10 minutes out now. 10 minutes. We'd been 10 minutes out for the past 45 minutes. I wanted to say something, wanted to call them out on the obvious impossibility of our situation. But I knew what would happen if I did. They'd go silent, or they'd tell me I was imagining things, or they'd drop me from the convoy count and I'd disappear like Ellis had disappeared. So I kept quiet and maintained my position, following Ellis's taillights through the gray half-darkness toward a city that would never arrive. At 7:28, something changed. The road started to curve. Just slightly at first, a gentle bend to the right. Highway 395 was mostly straight through this section, so a curve was notable. But more importantly, it was different. Variation. Change. The first real deviation I'd seen in hours. The convoy followed the curve, and as we came out of it, I saw something ahead that made no sense. Lights. Not the lights of Reno on the horizon. These were closer, right on the highway. Bright lights, emergency lights, red and blue flashing in the gray dawn. Lead to convoy, Dalton said, and for the first time I could hear uncertainty in his voice. We've got what looks like an accident scene ahead. Emergency vehicles. Prepare to slow down. We reduced speed, dropping from 65 to 45 to 30. The emergency lights grew brighter, and I could make out the shapes now. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cruisers all clustered around something on the highway. Something big. As we got closer, I realized what I was seeing. It was the convoy, our convoy. 4 trucks, jackknifed and crashed, spread across both lanes of the highway in a tangle of metal and cargo and broken glass. Emergency responders were moving between the wrecks, and I could see tarps laid out on the asphalt, the unmistakable shape of bodies beneath them. Jesus Christ, Garrett whispered over the CB. We came to a complete stop about 100 yards from the accident scene. I sat in my cab, staring at the wreckage, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. That was Dalton's Peterbilt, the blue paint scraped and dented but still recognizable. That was Garrett's Kenworth, lying on its side, the trailer split open. That was Ellis's Mack, completely destroyed, the cab crushed beyond recognition. And that was my Freightliner, the 4th truck in line, smashed into the back of Ellis's trailer like I'd failed to brake in time. I looked down at my hands on the steering wheel. Solid. Real. I could feel the vibration of the engine through my seat, smell the diesel exhaust, hear the crackle of the CB. I was here. I was alive. I was real. So what the hell was I looking at? A state trooper walked toward our convoy, flashlight in hand despite the growing dawn light. He approached Dalton's truck first, and I watched him gesture, saw Dalton's window roll down, saw them have a conversation I couldn't hear. The trooper moved down the line. Garrett, Ellis, and then he was at my window, tapping on the glass with his flashlight. I rolled it down. He was young, maybe 30, with the tired eyes of someone who'd been up all night dealing with tragedy. "You guys part of this convoy?" he asked. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. The trooper's expression shifted to concern. "Sir, are you all right? Are you injured?" "I don't understand," I finally managed. "We're right here. We're alive. How can we be—" I gestured toward the wreck. The trooper followed my gesture, then looked back at me with growing alarm. "Sir, what convoy are you talking about? What wreck?" I pointed again. "Right there. The 4 trucks. The accident." He turned and looked where I was pointing, and I saw his expression change from concern to something else. Pity, maybe, or fear. "Sir," he said slowly, "there's nothing there. The highway's completely clear." I looked again. The emergency vehicles were gone. The wrecked trucks were gone. The tarps, the bodies, everything just vanished. The highway stretched ahead, empty and pristine in the gray morning light. But "I think you need to pull over and let us check you out," the trooper said. "You might be experiencing some kind of episode. Exhaustion, maybe, or—" his radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice. "All units be advised. We have a report of a 4-truck convoy accident on Highway 395, approximately 10 miles north of your current position. Multiple fatalities. All available units respond." The trooper's face went pale. He grabbed his radio. "Copy that. I'm on scene now, but—" He paused, looking at me, then at the empty highway ahead. "Dispatch, can you confirm the location? I'm showing nothing at my current coordinates." "Location confirmed, 10 miles north. Fire department is en route. Estimated arrival 10 minutes. Copy." He turned back to me. "Sir, I need you to stay here. Don't move your vehicle. I'm going to call this in to my supervisor." He walked back toward his patrol car, radio in hand, leaving me sitting in my truck with more questions than answers. I looked at my CB. "Dalton? Garrett? Ellis? Anyone copy?" No response. Not even static. The CB was dead. I looked ahead at the other 3 trucks in the convoy. They were still there, engines idling, exactly where they'd been. But as I watched, Dalton's truck started to fade, slowly becoming transparent, and I could see through it to the highway beyond. Then Garrett's, then Ellis's. Within 30 seconds, they were gone. I was alone on the highway with the state trooper in his patrol car, and ahead of us, 10 miles north, there was an accident scene where 4 trucks had crashed. 4 trucks driven by 4 drivers who had left Bakersfield at midnight and never made it to Reno, including me. I looked down at my hands again. They were starting to fade too, becoming translucent, and I could see the steering wheel through them. "No," I whispered. "No, this isn't right. I'm here. I'm alive. I made it through." But did I? The question echoed in my mind. Did I make it through, or did I just refuse to accept that I didn't? My CB crackled back to life. My doppelganger's voice, gentle and sad. "You chose to keep driving. You chose to follow the lights. And now you're going to keep making that choice over and over, every night for the rest of time. Because that's what the last truck does. It follows, it observes, it reports what it sees, even when no one's listening anymore." "I don't accept this," I said. "You don't have to accept it. You just have to live it. Or whatever this is. Living or not living, being or not being, does it really matter which?" I looked in my rearview mirror. The pickup truck was there again, parked on the shoulder about 20 yards back. My doppelganger sat behind the wheel, watching me with patient eyes. "The accident happened," it said. "All 4 trucks crashed, all 4 drivers died, but you were the last one, so you saw it coming. You saw the brake lights ahead flash red, saw Dalton lose control, saw the whole convoy collapse in slow motion. And in that last second before impact, you made a choice." "What choice?" "To keep driving, to believe you could avoid it, to convince yourself that if you just stayed in formation, just followed the protocol, just maintained your spacing, you'd make it through. That's not, and you did make it through. In a way, you're still driving, still following, still reporting in on schedule. The only difference is that everyone else accepted what happened and moved on. You're the only one still running the route." The state trooper was walking back toward me, but he was moving in slow motion, each step taking forever, like he was walking through molasses. "This is your loop," my doppelganger continued. "This is your stretch of highway. Every night you leave Bakersfield at midnight. Every night you follow the convoy north. And every night you arrive here, at this spot, and see the accident that already happened. That you're part of, that you've been part of since the beginning. How do I stop it? You don't. The highway doesn't have an exit for people like you. You made your choice when you chose to keep driving instead of accepting the truth. Now you get to keep driving forever." My hands were almost completely transparent now. I could barely see them on the wheel. The trooper reached my window, but when he looked at me, his eyes went wide. "Sir, are you... where did..." His voice was fading, becoming distant, like he was shouting from the far end of a tunnel. And then everything went white. I'm sitting in my Freightliner in an industrial park in Bakersfield. The clock on my dashboard reads 11:53 p.m. My phone is ringing. It's Linda, the dispatcher. I know what she's going to say. Priority shipment to Reno. 4-truck convoy. Leave at midnight, triple rate plus a bonus. I know I'm going to say yes. Because that's what I always say. That's what I always do. And in 7.5 hours, I'll be sitting at that spot on Highway 395, watching emergency vehicles respond to an accident that I'm part of. Watching myself fade away, listening to my doppelganger explain the rules of the loop. And then I'll be back here at 11:53 p.m. with the phone ringing and the choice that isn't really a choice. Some people might call this hell. Others might call it purgatory. I call it the job. Because I'm a trucker, and truckers drive. That's what we do. We haul our cargo from point A to point B, and we don't ask too many questions about what happens in between. Even when point B is the same as point A. Even when the cargo is ourselves. Even when the only freight we're hauling is the weight of a choice we made in the last second before impact. The phone is ringing. I'm going to answer it. I always answer it. And in the morning, if morning ever comes, someone will find 4 trucks crashed on Highway 395, 10 miles north of the last place I remember being real. They'll find 4 bodies in 4 cabs, all of us dead on impact, all of us gone before we knew what happened. But one of those bodies won't quite be dead, not completely, because I'm the last truck in line, and the last truck always sees it first. Sees the crash, sees the death, sees the loop, and chooses to keep driving anyway. The phone is ringing. I pick it up. "Reeves," I say, my voice steady and professional. "Yeah, I'm available. What's the run?" And the loop begins again. I need to tell you about a convoy I drove in November of 2018. Or maybe I didn't drive it. That's the thing. I'm not entirely sure anymore what really happened that night, and the more I try to piece it together, the less sense any of it makes. My name is Cole Brixton, and I've been hauling freight for about 14 years. I'm based out of Omaha, Nebraska, running mostly regional routes through the Midwest. It's steady work, decent pay, and I know the roads well enough that I could probably drive them blindfolded. I'm not the type to see things that aren't there or make up stories. I'm a practical guy, boring even. My ex-wife used to say I had all the imagination of a parking meter. But what happened that November still haunts me, and I can't explain it no matter how hard I try. It started with a phone call on November 17th, a Saturday night around 10:30 p.m. I was at home watching TV, halfway through a beer, when my cell phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. In this business, you never know when it might be a dispatcher with a last-minute, high-paying run. "Is this Cole Brixton?" A woman's voice, professional, slightly distorted like she was calling from a bad connection. "Yeah, that's me. Who's this?" "This is Sandra from Midwest Transport Solutions. We have an urgent convoy assignment for tonight. Are you available?" I'd never heard of Midwest Transport Solutions, but that wasn't unusual. The freight industry has hundreds of small companies and brokers, and I'd worked with dozens of different outfits over the years. "Depends on the run and the pay," I said. 6-truck convoy, Omaha to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Medical supplies and equipment. Client needs delivery by 6 a.m. tomorrow. We're offering $2,000 for the run. I sat up straighter. $2,000 for a 300-mile haul was extremely good money, suspiciously good. "What's the catch?" I asked. "No catch. The client is a hospital network that had a supply chain failure. They need these materials for scheduled surgeries tomorrow morning. Time is critical, so we're paying premium rates for guaranteed overnight delivery." That made sense. Medical facilities didn't run on convenient schedules, and emergency supply runs weren't uncommon. "Who else is in the convoy?" I asked. 5 other experienced drivers. You'd be truck number 4. Lead driver is a man named Jackson Hart. He's done convoy work for us before. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. $2,000 was 2 months of mortgage payments. My truck was fueled and ready to go, and Sioux Falls was a straight shot north on I-29. Easy driving, good roads. "I'm in," I said. "Where's the staging point?" "North Omaha Distribution Center off Highway 75. Be there by midnight. Jackson will brief everyone on protocols and timing." "Got it. I'll see you there." "Actually, I won't be there. This is dispatch only, but Jackson will have all the information you need. Drive safe, Mr. Brixton." She hung up before I could ask any follow-up questions. I looked at the clock. It was 10:37 p.m., which gave me about 80 minutes to get to the staging area. I grabbed my keys, my overnight bag, and headed out to my truck. The drive to the distribution center took 20 minutes. It was a cold November night, temperature in the mid-30s, with a light wind that made it feel colder. The roads were mostly empty, just a few cars and the occasional truck heading to or from the interstate. I pulled into the distribution center at 11:48 p.m. It was a large facility with multiple loading docks and a sizable parking lot. 5 trucks were already there, lined up near the main gate, engines running, exhaust rising into the cold night air. I pulled into the 6th position and killed my engine. As I climbed down from the cab, a man walked over from the lead truck. He was maybe 45, tall and lean, with short graying hair and a weathered face that suggested years of outdoor work. "Cole Brixton?" he asked, extending his hand. "That's me. You must be Jackson." "Jackson Hart, yeah. Glad you could make it on short notice." He had a firm handshake and direct eye contact. "Let me introduce you to the others." We walked down the line of trucks. The 2nd position was driven by a younger guy named Travis, probably late 20s with nervous energy and a ready smile. 3rd position was Marcus, an older black man with gray in his beard and calm, intelligent eyes. Fifth position was driven by a woman named Sarah, the first female trucker I'd met in a convoy, though that was becoming more common. Sixth position was handled by a quiet guy named Raymond, who just nodded when introduced. "All right, everyone gather around," Jackson said once introductions were done. "Let me brief you on the run." We formed a loose circle under the harsh fluorescent lights of the parking lot. Jackson pulled out a tablet and showed us a route map. Straight shot north on I-29 from here to Sioux Falls. 310 miles, estimated drive time 5 hours accounting for convoy speed restrictions. We're hauling medical supplies, surgical equipment, pharmaceuticals, blood products. Everything is temperature sensitive and time critical. "What's the convoy protocol?" Marcus asked. "Standard formation, 200-foot spacing. Speed limit is 70 on most of this route, but we'll maintain 65 for safety. CB Channel 19 for primary comms, Channel 23 for backup. Check in every 30 minutes on the half hour, 12:30, 1 o'clock, etc. Questions so far?" "What happens if someone has a mechanical issue?" Sarah asked. "We assess on the spot. If it's fixable in under 10 minutes, we wait. Otherwise, that truck drops out and continues solo while the rest of the convoy pushes forward. The client needs at least 4 trucks to arrive together, so we have a 2-truck buffer." "What about fuel stops?" Travis asked. "Nobody should need fuel. This is a 5-hour run, and everyone should have at least half a tank. But if someone's running low, call it in immediately and we'll coordinate a quick stop." Jackson looked around the circle. "This is a straightforward run, people. Good roads, good weather, good pay. But the client is very particular about timing. We leave at midnight sharp, and we need to roll into Sioux Falls no later than 5:30 a.m. Everyone clear?" We all nodded or voiced agreement. "Good. Load checks are done. Dispatch confirmed all cargo is secure. Do your own pre-trip inspections and be ready to roll in 10 minutes." I walked back to my truck and did my inspection. Everything looked good. Tires, lights, brakes, coupling, cargo seals. The trailer was a standard refrigerated unit, and I could hear the cooling system humming. Temperature gauge on the side read 38 degrees Fahrenheit, right in the safe zone for medical supplies. At 11:58 p.m., Jackson's voice came over the CB. "Convoy check. Sound off by position." "1, ready," Jackson said. 2, good to go, Travis responded. 3, ready, Marcus said in his deep, calm voice. 4, ready, I said. 5, all set, Sarah confirmed. 6, good, Raymond said quietly. Excellent, wheels up in 90 seconds. Maintain spacing, maintain speed, maintain comms. Let's get this done. At exactly midnight, Jackson's brake lights flashed twice, and his rig rolled forward. Travis followed, then Marcus, then me, then Sarah, then Raymond. We formed a line of lights cutting through the darkness. 6 trucks moving as one unit, heading toward the interstate. The first 30 minutes were completely routine. We merged onto I-29 North, settled into formation at 65 miles per hour, and watched the mile markers tick by. The highway was nearly empty. Just us and the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. The night was clear, stars visible overhead, temperature holding steady in the mid-30s. At 12:30, Jackson called for the first check-in. Convoy check, sound off. 1, all systems green. 2, no issues. 3, good here. 4, all good, I said. 5, maintaining position. 6, status green. Roger. Next check at 1 o'clock. Keep it tight, everyone. I settled into the familiar rhythm of highway driving, watching Marcus's taillights ahead of me, occasionally glancing at my mirrors to confirm Sarah was maintaining proper spacing behind me, monitoring my gauges, staying alert but relaxed. At 12:47, something small caught my attention. We passed a mile marker that read 92, which seemed right for our location. But something about it looked off. The reflective surface was too bright, or the wrong shade, or positioned at a slightly wrong angle. I couldn't put my finger on what bothered me about it, but it nagged at me. At 12:53, we passed another mile marker. Mile 97. Again, something felt wrong about it, though I couldn't say what. I keyed my CB. 4 to Convoy. Anyone else think the mile markers look weird tonight? There was a pause. Then Travis responded. 2 here. What do you mean by weird? I don't know, just off somehow, different than usual. Marcus's voice. 3 here. I see what you mean. They look newer, maybe, like they were recently installed. That's it, I said. They look too new, like they haven't weathered. Jackson. I-29 does regular maintenance and marker replacement. Probably just a fresh batch, nothing to worry about. Copy that, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced. At 1:00 a.m., Jackson called for the scheduled check-in. We all responded normally. Everything was fine. We were making excellent time. By my GPS calculation, we were slightly ahead of schedule. At 1:17, I noticed something else that struck me as odd. We passed an exit sign for a town called Ashford. I'd driven I-29 dozens of times, and I'd never heard of Ashford. I pulled out my phone and checked the map. No town named Ashford appeared on the road. I zoomed in, thinking maybe it was too small to show at normal scale. Still nothing. The highway went through several small towns, Percival, Hamburg, Tabor, but no Ashford. 4 to Convoy, I said. Did we just pass an exit for Ashford? Affirmative, Jackson said. Small town, about 2 miles east of the highway. I'm not seeing it on my map. Probably too small to register. Population can't be more than a few hundred. That should have satisfied me, but it didn't. Small towns still showed up on GPS maps, even if they were just a dot and a name. At 1:23, we crossed the state line into Iowa, or at least we should have crossed the state line. The sign said, "Welcome to Iowa," but something was wrong with it. The state outline was slightly off, the dimensions not quite right, and the welcome message was phrased strangely. Iowa welcomes careful drivers. I'd crossed this border 100 times. The actual sign said Iowa, Fields of Opportunities. This was different. 4 to Convoy. Anyone else notice something off about the Iowa welcome sign? Silence on the CB. Lead, did you copy? Negative, 4. Radio's getting some interference. Repeat your last. The welcome sign, Iowa. Did it look normal to you? More static. Then Jackson's voice distorted. Looked fine to me. Standard sign. Why? I decided to drop it. Maybe I was tired or maybe my memory was off. But I was starting to feel uneasy about this run. At 1:30, during the check-in, I counted the responses carefully. 1. All systems green. 2. No issues. 3. Maintaining position. 4. All good, I said. 5. Status green. 6. Good here. 6 trucks. 6 responses. Everything normal. But something in the back of my mind whispered that I should count again, that the numbers didn't add up right somehow. At 1:44, we passed a rest area. The sign said, "Rest area 2 miles," but when we reached the supposed location 2 miles later, there was nothing there. No rest area, no exit, no buildings, just highway continuing north through flat Iowa farmland. Ford to lead. I thought we just passed a rest area sign. Affirmative. Must have been closed for renovation. But there was nothing there. Not even a closed facility. Just nothing. Jackson's voice came back after a long pause. Copy that, 4. Sometimes they remove the facilities but leave the signs up temporarily. I wouldn't worry about it. But I was worrying about it, because things were starting to add up in a wrong way, and I was beginning to suspect that something was very off about this convoy. At 2 o'clock, Jackson called for the check-in. Convoy check, sound off. 1, all systems green. 2, no issues. 3, good here. 4, all good, I said. 5, maintaining position. 6, status green. 7, no problems. I grabbed my CB mic immediately. Wait, 7? Who said 7? Silence. Someone just called in as Truck 7. Who was that? Jackson's voice. 4. This is a 6-truck convoy. Nobody called in as 7. I heard it right after Raymond. Someone said 7, no problems. Travis. I didn't hear anything after 6. Sarah. Me neither. Just 6 trucks checking in. Marcus. Cole, you feeling all right? Maybe pull over and take a break if you need one. I'm fine. I heard a 7th truck. Someone else is on this channel. Jackson. 4. I need you to calm down. There are 6 trucks in this convoy. 6 drivers. No one else on this frequency. If you're experiencing fatigue or confusion, let me know and we'll address it. But right now, you're creating a distraction. I bit back my response. They hadn't heard it. Somehow, only I had heard that 7th voice calling in, which meant either I was hallucinating, or something very wrong was happening with the radio, or with the convoy itself. At 2:13, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. If I heard that 7th voice again, I'd record it. Then I'd have proof. At 2:27, we passed a billboard advertising Heartland Family Restaurant, next exit. I'd never seen that restaurant before, but Iowa was full of small diners and family places. Nothing unusual. But when we reached the next exit, there was no restaurant. No buildings at all. Just an empty off-ramp leading to a county road that disappeared into darkness. At 2:30, Jackson called for the check-in. I hit record on my phone. Convoy check, sound off. 1, all systems green. 2, no issues. 3, maintaining position. 4, all good, I said. 5, status green. 6, good here. I waited, my phone recording. My hand tense on the CB mic. Nothing. No 7th voice. Copy all. Next check at 3 o'clock. I stopped the recording and played it back, listening carefully through my earbuds. The check-in played back exactly as I'd heard it. 6 trucks. 6 voices. Nothing else. But I'd been so certain. So absolutely certain that I'd heard a 7th truck the last time. At 2:41, my GPS did something strange. The route line flickered and changed, showing us on a highway that didn't quite match I-29. The road number was right, but the path was subtly different. Like someone had redrawn the map with slightly wrong curves and exits. I zoomed out, trying to get my bearings. The state borders looked wrong too. Iowa's western border with Nebraska wasn't quite the right shape. And there were towns marked on the map that I'd never heard of, while familiar towns were missing. At 2:48, I saw headlights approaching from the opposite direction. A car moving fast. As it passed, I caught a glimpse of it in my side mirror. It was an old model, maybe from the 1970s or 80s, but it looked brand new. No rust, pristine paint. And the people inside, I only saw them for a second, but their faces looked wrong somehow. Too smooth, too perfect, like mannequins. At 2:53, Travis's voice came over the CB, and he sounded shaken. 2 to Convoy. I need to report something weird. My odometer just reset to 0. What do you mean, reset? Jackson asked. I mean it was showing 82,000 miles, and now it's showing 0. Just zeroed out while I was watching it. "Probably an electrical glitch," Jackson said. "Is your engine running normally?" "Yeah, everything else is fine, just the odometer." "Monitor it and let me know if anything else happens." "Copy." At 3 a.m., Jackson called for the check-in. I recorded it again. "Convoy check, sound off." 1, and all systems green. 2, no issues besides the odometer thing. 3, maintaining position. 4, all good, I said, though nothing was good. 5, status green. 6, good here. And then, clear as day. 7, all systems green. I grabbed my mic. "There, did everyone hear that? 7. Jackson. 4, I'm going to need you to stay off the channel unless you have a genuine emergency. No one is calling in as Truck 7. But I heard it, clear as anything. You're the only one hearing it, Cole. Which means the problem is on your end. Check your radio, check your hearing, check your mental state, but stop disrupting the convoy comms." I played back the recording, hands shaking. The audio was clear. 6 trucks, 6 voices, nothing more. But I had heard it, I knew I had heard it. At 3:17, my temperature gauge, which had been steady at 38 degrees all night, suddenly dropped to 29, then jumped to 45, then back to 38. At 3:23, we passed mile marker 187. 5 minutes later, we passed mile marker 187 again. The same marker. The same exact dent in the post, the same angle, the same reflection pattern. We were looping. The highway was repeating itself. At 3:30, during the check-in, I didn't bother recording. I just counted carefully. 6 voices responded. But in my rearview mirror, I counted the trucks behind me. Sarah in position 5, Raymond in position 6, and a 7th truck, running dark, no company markings, maintaining perfect spacing behind Raymond. I could see it. It was right there. A 7th truck that shouldn't exist following our convoy through the Iowa darkness. And as I watched, an 8th truck pulled in behind it. Then a 9th. The convoy was growing, adding trucks that nobody could hear, that nobody but me could see that weren't supposed to be there. At 3:47, I made a decision that probably saved my life, or at least my sanity. I slowed down, dropping from 65 to 50, creating a gap in the convoy formation. 4. "Why are you falling back?" Jackson asked. "Need to check something. Possible tire issue. Can you make it to the next exit?" "Yeah, I'll catch up once I've assessed." "Copy. Let us know when you're rolling again." I let the convoy pull ahead, watching their taillights disappear into the distance. And I watched the trucks that followed me, 7, 8, 9 of them now, slow down to match my speed, maintaining their spacing, following me instead of the main convoy. They weren't part of the convoy at all. They were following me specifically. At 3:52, I pulled off onto the shoulder, put my hazards on, and got out of my truck. The phantom trucks pulled over behind me, one after another, like dominoes. 9 trucks that made no sound, produced no exhaust, cast no light except their headlights. I walked back toward them, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The first truck, the 7th position, looked almost normal. Almost. But the details were wrong. The manufacturer's badge was misspelled. The mud flaps had a logo I didn't recognize. The license plate was a series of numbers that didn't follow any state's format. The second truck was worse. The proportions were off. The cab was too long. The wheels were too far apart, the trailer attached at an impossible angle. The third truck wasn't a truck at all anymore. It was something shaped like a truck, but made of materials that didn't exist, following physical laws that didn't apply. I backed away slowly, returning to my cab, and pulled back onto the highway. The phantom trucks followed. And ahead, somewhere in the darkness, the real convoy drove on towards Sioux Falls, completely unaware that they'd lost Truck 4 to something that existed in the spaces between mile markers, in the gaps between check-ins, in the version of the highway that nobody was supposed to see. I drove alone through the pre-dawn darkness, followed by 9 trucks that shouldn't exist, heading toward a destination that might not be there, on a highway that had stopped making sense hours ago. And somewhere in my mind, a terrible certainty was growing. This convoy was never real. The dispatch call, the other drivers, the route itself, none of it existed in the way I understood existence. I was driving through something else, something that looked like Iowa, that pretended to be a convoy run, but was actually something much stranger and much more dangerous, and I had no idea how to get back to the real world, or if I ever would. At 4:00 a.m., I pulled off at an exit for a town called Riverside. I needed to stop, needed to think, needed to figure out what was happening. The phantom trucks followed me off the highway, maintaining their spacing all the way down the ramp. The town was there, buildings, streetlights, a few businesses along the main drag, but it was completely deserted. No cars, no people, no lights in any windows. Just empty structures standing in the cold November darkness like a movie set after everyone's gone home. I pulled into the parking lot of a closed gas station, my phantom convoy pulling in behind me like a procession of ghosts. Through my mirrors, I could see them more clearly now. 9 trucks, each one slightly less real than the last, stretching back into the darkness like a corrupted photograph. I grabbed my phone and tried calling dispatch, Sandra from Midwest Transport Solutions. The call wouldn't connect. Not busy, not out of service, just wouldn't connect. Like I was trying to call a number that had never existed. I tried texting my wife. The message wouldn't send. I tried opening my browser to search for Midwest Transport Solutions. The page loaded, but the search returned no results. The company didn't exist. No website, no social media presence, no listings in any freight directory. I sat there in my cab, staring at my phone, trying to process what this meant. Then I thought of something. I opened my banking app and checked my account. If this convoy was real, there should be a contract signed, a payment arrangement, something in my records. There was nothing. No contract with Midwest Transport Solutions. No pending payment. No record of any kind that I'd agreed to this run. I checked my calendar. No entry for tonight's convoy. I checked my texts and call history. No call at 10:30 p.m. from Sandra or anyone else offering me this job. According to my phone, this convoy had never been scheduled. I had no reason to be here, no reason to be driving through Iowa in the middle of the night. But I was here. My truck was here. The phantom convoy behind me was here. All of it was real, in some sense, even if the record said otherwise. At 4:17, I tried the CB again. Fordet to Convoy. Jackson, do you copy? Static. Anyone on this frequency, please respond. More static, then a voice that wasn't quite right. We copy 4. We've been waiting for you. Who is this? We're the convoy. We've always been the convoy. You fell behind, and we've been waiting for you to catch up. Jackson, is that you? Jackson was never real, Cole. None of them were real. It was always just you, driving alone, imagining you were part of something larger. My blood ran cold. That's not true. I met them. I shook Jackson's hand. I talked to all of them. Did you? Or did you see what you expected to see? Did you talk to shadows and convince yourself they were people? I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my photos, desperate for proof. I'd taken a picture of something tonight, I was sure of it. The convoy lineup, or the briefing, or nothing. No photos from tonight. The most recent image in my camera roll was from 3 days ago. "This isn't real," I said out loud. "This conversation isn't real. You're just stress or fatigue or we're as real as anything else in this place," the voice said. "And you've been here longer than you think. Check your fuel gauge, Cole. Check how far you've driven." I looked at my fuel gauge. It should have dropped by at least a third, maybe half, given the hours of driving. But it was completely full, the needle pegged at the maximum. And my trip odometer, which should have shown at least 300 miles, showed 0.0. "No," I whispered. "No, this is wrong." "Wrong according to what?" "According to the rules of the world you came from. But you're not in that world anymore, Cole. You haven't been for hours. You crossed over without even noticing." "Crossed over into what?" "Into the spaces between. Into the version of the highway that exists for drivers who accept the wrong dispatch, who follow the wrong convoy, who make the wrong turn at the wrong time. You're in the shadow road now, and the shadow road doesn't let people leave." I refused to accept it. Refused to believe that I'd somehow fallen out of reality without noticing, that everything tonight had been a trap or an illusion or whatever this was. "If this is the shadow road," I said, "then where's the real I-29? Where's the real convoy? Still running, probably. Still heading to Sioux Falls. But they don't remember you. They never had a truck 4. They left with 5 trucks, and they'll arrive with 5 trucks, and nobody will ever ask what happened to Cole Brixton because Cole Brixton was never part of their convoy." I started my engine. "Then I'll find the real highway. I'll get back to the real world." "You can try. Others have tried. But the shadow road is longer than the real road, and it has more exits, and every exit leads somewhere stranger than the last. Good luck, Cole. You're going to need it." The CB went silent. I sat there for a long moment, breathing hard, trying to think rationally. There had to be an explanation. Stress-induced hallucination. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Some kind of elaborate prank. Anything but the impossible thing the voice had suggested. I looked in my rearview mirror. The 9 phantom trucks were still there, idling silently, waiting for me to make a decision. I put my truck in gear and pulled out of the gas station parking lot. If this was the shadow road, then somewhere there had to be an entrance, which meant there had to be an exit. I just needed to find it. I got back on the highway, or what looked like the highway, and headed north. The phantom convoy followed. At 4:30, Jackson's voice came over the CB for a check-in, but it sounded distant and hollow, like a recording played through broken speakers. I didn't respond. I was done pretending this was a normal convoy run. At 4:43, I passed a sign that said Sioux Falls, 47 miles. That should have been encouraging. We were getting close to the destination. But something about the sign bothered me. The number 47 seemed arbitrary, disconnected from any actual distance. And when I checked my GPS, it showed Sioux Falls as still being over 200 miles away. At 4:51, I saw something ahead on the road that made me slow down. There was a truck pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing. As I got closer, I recognized it. It was Marcus's rig, Truck 3 from the convoy. I pulled over behind it, grabbed my flashlight, and got out. The phantom truck stopped on the shoulder behind me, forming a line of silent witnesses. Marcus's truck was empty. The driver's door was open, keys still in the ignition, engine running. But there was no sign of Marcus anywhere. I looked in the cab, checked the trailer, walked a circle around the entire rig. Nothing. He had just vanished. On the dashboard, I saw a note. Handwritten, but the letters were wrong. Too perfect, too uniform. Like They'd been printed rather than written by hand. It read, "The convoy continues. We all reach the destination eventually." I backed away from the truck and returned to my own rig. As I climbed into my cab, I looked in my mirror and saw that Marcus's truck had disappeared. Just gone, like it had never been there. The phantom trucks were still there, though. Still following, still waiting. At 5 o'clock a.m., the eastern sky should have been showing the first hints of dawn. But the darkness was absolute, unchanging, eternal. The night had stopped progressing toward morning, locked in a permanent pre-dawn twilight. At 5:17, I saw another truck on the shoulder. This time, it was Travis's Kenworth. Empty, abandoned, engine running, driver's door open. Another note on the dashboard. "Thank you for your service. Your delivery is appreciated." At 5:28, I found Sarah's truck. Same condition, same mysterious abandonment. I didn't stop for this one. I just drove past, my heart pounding, my hands gripping the wheel so hard they ached. The convoy had collapsed. All the other drivers were gone, vanished one by one, leaving their trucks behind like shells. And I was alone on the shadow road, with only my phantom followers for company. At 5:30, Jackson's voice came over the CB one last time. "Cole," he said, and his voice was sad and tired and very far away. "I'm sorry we couldn't tell you the truth, but the shadow road needs drivers, and it chooses carefully. You were selected, Cole. This was always meant to be your road." "Tell me how to get off it," I said. "Tell me how to go back. You can't go back. Nobody goes back. But you can go forward. You can accept your role, become part of the convoy that exists in the spaces between, help guide other lost drivers to their destinations." "What destinations? Where are we even going?" "Nowhere. Everywhere. It doesn't matter. The driving is the point, Cole. The eternal movement, the perpetual journey. That's what the Shadow Road offers. Freedom from arrival. Freedom from destinations. Just the pure experience of driving forever through the endless night. That's not freedom, that's hell. That's a matter of perspective." Jackson paused. "I have to go now. We all have to go. But you'll see us again, Cole. On the Shadow Road, everyone meets eventually. Safe travels." The CB went dead. At 5:47, I crested a hill and saw something that took my breath away. Ahead of me, stretching from horizon to horizon, was a vast parking lot filled with trucks. Thousands of them, maybe hundreds of thousands, all parked in perfect rows, all empty, all abandoned. The lost trucks of the Shadow Road, the vehicles of drivers who'd accepted the wrong dispatch and ended up here. And beyond the parking lot in the distance, I could see the highway continuing. The Shadow Road went on, winding through the darkness, promising more miles, more exits, more small towns that didn't quite exist. The phantom trucks behind me had multiplied. There were dozens now, maybe hundreds, all following me toward that vast graveyard of vehicles. I had a choice to make. I could keep driving, keep following the Shadow Road wherever it led, join the eternal convoy of lost drivers who'd given up trying to find the real world. Or I could stop. Park my truck in that vast lot, join all the others who'd reached this place and gone no further. Or I could try something else, something the voice hadn't mentioned, because maybe it didn't want me to know it was possible. I could reject the road entirely. At 5:53, I did something that probably saved me, though I'm still not entirely sure how or why it worked. I turned around. Not a three-point turn, not a U-turn on the highway. I literally turned the truck around, driving backward, facing the wrong direction, heading south when the Shadow Road only ran north. The highway didn't like it. The pavement started to crack beneath my tires. The mile markers began spinning backward. The sky flickered between night and day, and night again. The phantom trucks tried to follow, but they couldn't. They were locked into forward motion, unable to reverse, unable to break the pattern. They fell away behind me, fading into the darkness, and I was alone. I drove backward for what felt like hours, watching the mile markers count down, watching the sky gradually shift from black to gray to the first hints of real dawn. And then, suddenly, I was back on normal I-29, in Normal, Iowa, in a normal November morning. I found a rest area and pulled in, my hands shaking so badly I could barely steer. I sat there in the parking lot for a long time, watching other trucks come and go, watching normal people live normal lives, grateful to be back in a world that made sense. I checked my phone. It was 6:47 a.m., Sunday, November 18th. I'd been driving all night, but the convoy had never existed. Midwest Transport Solutions had never called. Jackson, Travis, Marcus, Sarah, Raymond, none of them were real. Or maybe they were real, but they existed in a different version of the highway, a version I'd somehow accessed and escaped from. I pulled out my logbook to record the night's drive and found something that made my blood freeze. There was an entry for last night, written in my handwriting, but I didn't remember writing it. It said November 17th, 11:30 p.m. to November 18th, 6:47 a.m. solo run, Omaha to Sioux Falls. Delivery completed successfully. No incidents. But I hadn't delivered anything. I hadn't reached Sioux Falls. I'd turned around and escaped the shadow road before reaching whatever destination it had in mind. Unless I had reached Sioux Falls. Unless I'd completed the delivery in some version of reality that I couldn't remember. Unless the shadow road had used me for its own purposes while I thought I was escaping. I checked my fuel gauge. Empty. I'd burned a full tank of diesel. I checked my trip odometer. 347 miles. The exact distance from Omaha to Sioux Falls and back to this rest area. Whatever had happened last night, it was over now. I was back in the real world, back on the real highway, back in the version of reality where I belonged. But I knew I'd never fully escape it. Because somewhere, on a highway that exists in the spaces between real roads, a convoy is still running. 6 trucks, or maybe 9, or maybe hundreds, all following the same route to the same impossible destination. And one of those trucks has my name on it. I should have let it go. Should have written it off as a stress-induced episode, a weird night of highway hallucinations, and moved on with my life. That's what any rational person would do. But I couldn't shake the feeling that what I'd experienced was real, that I'd actually driven on that shadow road and somehow found my way back. And if it was real, then it had happened to others. There had to be evidence. I spent the next 3 weeks obsessing over it. I searched online for any mention of Midwest Transport Solutions. Nothing. I called every freight company and broker in the Midwest asking if they'd heard of them. None had. I tried to find the other drivers from the convoy. Jackson Hart, Travis, Marcus, Sarah, Raymond, and came up empty on all of them. According to every searchable record, that convoy had never existed, and those people had never existed. But my logbook said I'd made the drive. My fuel receipts showed I'd burned a full tank. My own memory, fragmented and unreliable as it was, insisted that something had happened. On December 9th, I got a call from a trucker I knew named Pete Dalton. We'd run some routes together years ago and stayed in touch, swapping stories and industry gossip. "Cole, I heard something weird that made me think of you," Pete said. "You know anything about a convoy that disappeared a few years back? 6 trucks heading from Omaha to Sioux Falls?" My heart started racing. When was this? Trying to remember. I think it was 2016. Yeah, November 2016. All 6 trucks just vanished somewhere on I-29. Never reached their destination, never called in, Just gone. Massive search operation found nothing. No wrecks, no trucks, no drivers. Like they evaporated. Pete, I need everything you know about this. Every detail. Not much to tell, man. It was in the news for a few days, then the story just kind of died. Company that hired them folded soon after. Some outfit called Plains Transport or something. I only remember it because one of the drivers was a friend of a friend. Do you remember any of the drivers' names? Just one. Jackson Hart, lead driver. Guy was a legend, 20+ years on the road, never had an accident, and then he just vanished. My skin went cold. Pete, I need to call you back. I hung up and immediately started searching. Convoy disappearance I-29, November 2016. Nothing. Jackson Hart missing trucker, 2016. Still nothing. 6 trucks disappeared Iowa. No results that matched what Pete had described. It was like the internet had been scrubbed of any mention of it. Or like Pete's memory was conflating different events. Or like the convoy existed in a liminal space where it was real enough to be remembered, but not real enough to leave permanent records. I called Pete back. Can you connect me with your friend, the one who knew Jackson Hart? Sure. I'll text you his number. Guy's name is Tom Briggs. Tell him I sent you. 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with Tom Briggs. Yeah, I remember Jackson, Tom said. Good driver, solid guy. We ran some routes together back in the day. Pete said he disappeared in 2016. That's right, November. He took a convoy job, some overnight run, and never came back. Police investigated, but they never found anything. It was like he drove off the edge of the world. Tom, this is going to sound crazy, but do you remember what company hired him for that run? Some small outfit. Transport Solutions, I think. Or Midwest Transport, something like that. Why? My pulse was hammering. Because I think I drove the same route. Same company, same convoy, last month. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, Cole, if you're messing with me, I'm not. I swear I'm not. I got a call from a dispatcher named Sandra offering me a convoy run from Omaha to Sioux Falls. 6 trucks, leaving at midnight. And when I showed up, Jackson Hart was the lead driver. That's impossible. Jackson's been missing for 2 years. I know, but I met him. I shook his hand. He briefed us on the route. Another long silence. Cole, I don't know what you experienced, but Jackson Hart is gone. If you saw someone claiming to be him, it was someone else. Maybe someone playing a sick joke, or it wasn't a joke. And it wasn't just Jackson. The whole convoy was wrong. We drove through towns that don't exist, past mile markers that repeated, into a night that never ended. I barely made it back, Tom, and I need to know if anyone else has experienced this. Look, I want to help you, but I don't know what to tell you. Jackson's disappearance was investigated thoroughly. They found his truck abandoned at a rest area in Iowa, engine running, door open, no sign of him. That's all anyone knows. Which rest area? I don't remember, but I have some of the old news clippings saved. I'll email them to you. The email arrived an hour later. 3 newspaper articles from various Iowa and Nebraska papers, all from November 2016. They described the disappearance of 6 commercial trucks and their drivers, last seen departing Omaha on the night of November 17th. November 17th, the exact same date I'd driven the convoy. 2 years apart, but the same date. The articles mentioned the lead driver by name, Jackson Hart, age 47, from Lincoln, Nebraska. There was a photo, the same man I'd met and shaken hands with at that industrial park. The other drivers weren't named in the articles, but one mentioned 5 additional experienced drivers, all with clean safety records. I kept digging. I spent hours searching through archived news sites, trucking forums, missing persons databases, and slowly, piece by piece, I started finding references to other disappearances. November 17, 2014. 4 trucks vanished on a convoy run from Omaha to Sioux Falls. November 17, 2012. 6 trucks disappeared, same route. November 17, 2010. 5 trucks never seen again. The pattern went back decades. Every 2 years, on November 17th, a convoy would depart Omaha heading north, and some or all of the trucks would vanish without a trace. And in every case, the company that hired them couldn't be verified afterward. Midwest Transport Solutions, Plains Transport Company, Heartland Freight Services. All ghost companies that existed just long enough to make the calls, hire the drivers, and disappear. I created a spreadsheet documenting every disappearance I could find. 27 convoys over 54 years, all following the same pattern. The earliest mention I found was from 1964, a newspaper clipping describing 6 freight haulers who vanished on Highway 29 under mysterious circumstances. Whatever the Shadow Road was, it had been claiming drivers for over half a century. On December 15th, I made a decision that probably crossed the line from research into obsession. I drove back to Omaha, to that industrial park where I'd met the convoy. It was early afternoon, cold and overcast. The facility was operational, trucks coming and going, warehouse workers loading and unloading freight. I pulled into the parking area where we'd staged that night and got out. Everything looked normal, regular industrial operations, nothing sinister or strange. But I walked to the exact spot where I'd parked my truck that night, and I noticed something odd. The pavement was darker there. Not just dirty, actually darker like it was made of different material. And when I knelt down and touched it, the asphalt felt wrong, colder than it should be, and slightly soft, like it hadn't fully solidified. "Can I help you?" I turned to find a security guard approaching, hand near his radio. "Sorry, I used to work a run out of this facility. Just checking on something. You need to leave if you don't have current business here." "Right, yeah, I'm going." As I walked back to my truck, I glanced over my shoulder. The dark patch of pavement was gone. Just normal asphalt, indistinguishable from the rest of the lot. That night, I drove past the distribution center at exactly 11:30 p.m. I parked across the street and watched. At 11:47, trucks started arriving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They lined up in the same formation I remembered, though the specific rigs were different. At 11:53, a man walked out and started talking to the drivers. Even from a distance, I recognized his posture, his movements. Jackson Hart. I grabbed my phone and zoomed in, snapping photos as quickly as I could. But when I looked at the images, they were distorted, blurred, and pixelated, like the camera couldn't quite focus on what it was seeing. At 11:59, a 6th truck arrived and pulled into position. At exactly midnight, the convoy rolled out, heading toward the interstate. I followed them, kept my distance, stayed several car lengths back, watched as they merged onto I-29 North and headed into the darkness. At 12:17, they passed mile marker 92. I noted the time and location carefully. At 12:23, they passed mile marker 97. At 12:30, I heard Jackson's voice on the CB calling for a check-in. 6 trucks responded, their voices crackling through the static. And then a 7th voice, faint, distorted, but definitely there. 7, maintaining position. They had a new recruit. Some driver who'd answered the wrong phone call, accepted the wrong dispatch, and was now heading down the Shadow Road toward a destination he'd never reach. I wanted to warn him, wanted to call out on the CB and tell him to turn around, to get out while he still could. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Once you joined the convoy, once you followed those taillights into the darkness, you were committed. The shadow road had you, and it didn't let go. At 12:47, something happened that I didn't expect. The convoy started to fade. Not all at once, but gradually, like they were driving into fog or smoke. Their lights got dimmer, their forms less distinct, until they were barely visible, even though they were less than a quarter mile ahead of me. By 1 o'clock, they were gone completely. The highway ahead was empty. I kept driving north, following the route, looking for any sign of where they'd gone, but there was nothing. Just normal I-29 in normal Iowa on a normal December night. At 1:17, I reached the spot where I'd seen Marcus's abandoned truck on my run. There was nothing there now, just empty highway shoulder. At 1:28, I stopped at a rest area and pulled out my research, spreading the documents across my passenger seat. 27 convoys over 54 years. Hundreds of missing drivers. A pattern so clear and consistent that someone should have noticed, should have investigated, should have done something. But nobody had. Or if they had, their investigations went nowhere. Their reports were filed away, and the disappearances continued like clockwork every 2 years. I thought about Jackson Hart, driving the Shadow Road for 2 years now, or maybe longer in whatever strange time that place operated under. I thought about all the other drivers trapped in their eternal convoy, hauling cargo to destinations that didn't exist. And I thought about the fact that I'd escaped. I'd turned around, driven backward, rejected the pattern, and somehow made it back to the real world. Which meant escape was possible. Difficult, maybe. Requiring some specific action or realization. But possible. I needed to figure out how I'd done it. What exactly had broken the spell, had severed the Shadow Road's hold on me. Because if I could understand it, I could help others. I could warn the next driver who got that midnight phone call, could give them the information they needed to avoid the trap entirely. At 1:47, I saw headlights approaching from the north. A single truck driving south, moving fast. As it got closer, I recognized the rig. It was my truck. My exact truck, down to the scrape on the left fender and the faded company logo on the door. It passed me doing at least 80, and I caught a glimpse of the driver. It was me. My face, my jacket, my Cat Diesel cap. But the eyes were wrong. Too wide, too aware, too hungry. The truck disappeared into the darkness heading south, and I sat there in the rest area parking lot trying to process what I'd just seen. That was my shadow, my doppelganger, the version of me that had stayed on the Shadow Road, that had accepted the eternal drive, that was now part of the phantom convoy. Which meant I hadn't fully escaped. Part of me was still there, still driving, still following those taillights into the endless night. And somewhere in the multiverse of highways, in the version of I-29 that existed between mile markers and moments, Cole Brixton was truck 4 in an eternal convoy, checking in every 30 minutes, maintaining his spacing, heading toward Sioux Falls forever. At 2:00 a.m., I made another decision. I couldn't let this keep happening. Every 2 years, more drivers disappeared. More trucks joined the phantom convoy. More people fell through the cracks in reality and ended up on the Shadow Road. I had to find a way to stop it, or at least to warn people, to shine a light on the pattern and force someone to investigate, to acknowledge, to intervene. But who would believe me? I had photos that wouldn't develop properly, memories that couldn't be verified, a logbook entry that proved nothing except that I'd driven somewhere that night. I didn't have evidence. I had a story, and stories aren't enough. Unless unless I made sure the next convoy didn't disappear, unless I followed them, documented everything, and brought back proof that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. It was a dangerous plan, maybe a stupid plan, but it was the only plan I had, and I had exactly 23 months to prepare for it. Because November 17th would come again, the Shadow Road would open again, and when it did, I'd be ready. 23 months is a long time to obsess over something. Long enough to lose your wife, your friends, your sense of proportion. That's what happened to me between December 2018 and November 2020. I stopped taking regular routes. I spent all my time researching, documenting, preparing. I filled 3 notebooks with information about the disappearances. I turned my apartment into what my ex-wife called a serial killer's evidence board before she left. On November 17th, 2020, at exactly 10:30 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Cole Brixton?" A woman's voice. Professional. Slightly distorted. "It is. This is Sandra from Midwest Transport Solutions. We have an urgent convoy assignment for tonight. Are you available?" I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. "I'm available, but I need names and company affiliations for everyone in the convoy." Long pause. "That information will be provided at the staging area. I want to know now." "Mr. Brixton, we need your confirmation immediately, or we'll move to the next available driver. Then move on." Instead of hanging up, Sandra said, "The lead driver is Jackson Hart." My blood ran cold. Jackson Hart has been missing since 2016. Jackson Hart is one of our most reliable drivers. Are you interested in this assignment or not? I'll be at the staging area at midnight. I called Pete Dalton and told him to track my GPS. If I don't text you by 8 a.m., start making calls. At 11:45 p.m., I pulled into the industrial park. 5 trucks were already there. I recognized some from my research, rigs that had disappeared in previous convoys. Jackson Hart walked toward me, looking exactly the same as 2 years ago, not aged a day. "Cole Brixton," he said, extending his hand. "Good to see you again." I didn't take it. "You remember me?" "Of course. You were with us in 2018. You completed the run, and now you're back for another one." "That's not what happened. I escaped." Jackson smiled. "The Shadow Road doesn't need to trick people. People trick themselves. You've spent 2 years obsessing over it. You've sacrificed everything. And now you're here. If that's not a choice, what is?" I pulled out my phone. The call log showed no incoming call at 10:30 p.m. At exactly midnight, the convoy rolled out. I was truck 6 bringing up the rear. We merged onto I-29 North, and immediately the highway changed. The pavement was darker, the mile markers wrong, the stars positioned in impossible patterns. We'd crossed over to the Shadow Road. At 1 o'clock, we passed mile marker 0. At 1:30, we passed it again. At 2 o'clock, my recording had corrupted. Just static. At 2:30, I pulled over. The convoy continued without me. I got out and stood on the Shadow Road, looking at a landscape that couldn't exist. Desert that was somehow also forest. Mountains both near and impossibly distant. I had a choice to make. I could keep driving, join the eternal convoy, or escape again, leaving another piece of myself behind. I'd seen my shadow self 2 years ago. Still driving, still trapped. How many times could I fragment before nothing was left? At 3 o'clock a.m., I made my choice. I turned off my engine and started walking. Not forward or backward, but perpendicular to the highway, into the impossible landscape, leaving the road entirely. Behind me, I heard engines, dozens, maybe hundreds, trying to stop me. But I kept walking into the darkness beyond the margins. And in that space between worlds, I found all the other versions of myself, every fragment left behind, all standing in the darkness with my face. "You can't keep doing this," one said. "Eventually, there won't be enough of you left." I know, but I can't stop trying. They looked at me and slowly smiled. "Then we'll help you. We'll show you the way out, the real way, the exit that doesn't cost pieces of yourself." They formed a path leading toward a pinpoint of light in the distance. "Walk toward the light," they said in unison. "Don't stop, don't look back. When you reach it, you'll be free. All of us will." I walked for hours, or minutes, or years. Time didn't work there. Eventually, I reached the light, an exit sign showing a real I-29 number. I climbed the off-ramp and found myself on the shoulder of the real highway. My truck was there. It was 6:47 a.m., November 18th, 2020. Pete had texted 17 times. I texted back, "I'm okay, I made it out, and I have the proof." In my pocket was a mile marker from the Shadow Road. Physical proof. Metal stamped with 0, made from materials that didn't exist. I drove to the police station. When they tested the marker and found materials that matched no database, they listened. An investigation was launched. Federal involvement. They found enough evidence to confirm it. Drivers had been disappearing for over 50 years, always November 17th, always the same pattern. They posted warnings at every truck stop along I-29. It wasn't enough to close the Shadow Road, but it made it harder for new drivers to fall through. That was 3 years ago. I still drive, but not convoys. I stay away from I-29 on November 17th. So far, no new disappearances. Maybe the Shadow Road is dormant. Maybe waiting. Maybe it's just patient, knowing eventually someone will answer that phone call, accept the dispatch, show up for a convoy that doesn't exist. Someday, someone will say yes. Maybe even me again. Because part of me wonders if I really escaped at all, or if I just found a deeper layer of the trap.